The story begins in a dimly lit room as the protagonist slowly regained consciousness. Before them, a girl, seemingly unconscious or dead, lay on a blood-red magic circle surrounded by candles. They asked themselves what happened, then frantically looked around the room. As they saw coffins and writings of blood on the floor, they were left wondering where they were. Just then, flashes of memory began to return, and they recalled a truck barreling down the road. The protagonist was on their way to the hospital when they died and possibly got reincarnated. Just then, the girl called out their name, Luxe. The protagonist asked if she had just called him Luxe, and she confirmed it. Still unable to believe it, Luxe aggressively shook the girl, asking her if she was sure. The girl, startled by his sudden closeness, called him out. Luxe quickly searched for a mirror, and when he finally found one, his doubts were confirmed. He couldn't believe it. He had become Lux Zeldia from Blazfan. He panicked at the thought, thinking it was the worst situation possible. Blaze Fantasy. That was the game he had been hooked on the most in his whole life. Lux then looked at a map hung on the wall, seeing the kingdom of Rogland and the Zeldia territory. As he was deep in thought, the girl, still tied up, asked him if he was okay. He suddenly started looking at the map out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Lux arrived at a conclusion. There was no doubt about it, this was exactly as it appeared in the official setting of the book. The girl was confused while Lux paced around the room. He had read it so many times that it was worn out. The book was thick and he paid an expensive amount of 6,800 yen for it. He always played Blaze Fantasy, also known as Blazfan. There, the player's objective was to raise the likability of the heroines they were after. There was a school part where the player would aim for a happy ending. There was also a battle part which involved cooperating with the heroines to defeat the Demon King. It was a very popular action RPG. Truly, Lux was being reincarnated into Blazfan. Just then, he thought about Lyra Scarlet and how she was doing. The girl asked if he was referring to the princess. Then she informed him she was doing well. He then asked about Eliza and Claire, which made the girl think he was listing women's names. Suddenly, she teased him about being in love with them, and he didn't even bother denying it. He claimed that he really did, and he loved them all. Unbeknownst to the girl, he meant to say that as a fan, but she was already baffled by the thought. As the girl was weirded out by him, Lux thought about meeting the girls himself, now that he had been reincarnated. He started recalling the plot of the game, and he remained oblivious to the girl's stare. Finally, he snapped back to reality, asking the girl what she was doing. She suddenly screamed, reminding him that he did that to her. This girl is Morga, the Zeldia family's maid in training. Lux freaked out, not recalling any of her claims. It turned out that before his reincarnation, his character wanted to summon a demon, and Morga was the unfortunate sacrifice. Lux forgot those events since he was abruptly reincarnated. Lux Zeldia was a middle boss in Blazfan. In a word, he was despised. Just then, Lux announced that they would drop the demon summoning and clean up the place. He untied Morga, apologizing for dragging her along. He guessed she hated it, but Morga said she didn't. How could she hate something when it let her skip work? Lux stuttered, struggling to believe her reasoning. The two quickly got to work, cleaning up the mess Lux had initiated. In the middle of it all, Lux asked himself what he should do now. Just then, a maid entered the room, telling Morga to clean up the main hall. She stuttered upon seeing Lux, so he apologized for startling her and for borrowing Morga as well. The maid stuttered as she avoided his gaze. However, when she accidentally looked at his face, she started screaming, thinking he was the child of the evil eye. Lux was stunned, and before he knew it, the maid started bolting toward the door. Morga told her to wait, but the maid kept on running. Sensing Lux's silence, Morga tried to reassure him. However, he played it cool, saying he understood the maid. Indeed, the evil eye was despised in this world. Hundreds of years ago, the Demon King of the past was also born with an evil eye. The fear of the evil eye was deeply engraved in people's memories that it became folklore. A child with an evil eye was said to bring disaster to the country. Lux's mother hanged herself shortly after giving birth, and his father treated him as if he didn't exist. This was all because he was the child of the evil eye, and so Lux's character became deranged, and he was obsessed with summoning demons. A few years later, he actually revived the Demon King's soul. Afterwards, he was tempted by the Demon King's soul after being forced to fight with the hero for a long time. Lux was killed in the end, and there was not a single route for his character to survive. Everything was according to the Demon King's plan. The Demon King then took the evil eye from Lux's corpse and made a complete revival. This meant, as long as Lux had that evil eye, he would be targeted by the Demon King's forces. Even though he finally got reincarnated into the world of Blazfan, he might just be destined to die after all. Bro got reincarnated just to speedrun death. Lux was consumed by horrible thoughts, his fears projecting through his eyes. Suddenly his mind returned to Morga, who informed him that the maid was new. Lux said he didn't mind, but Morga continued, saying that the new maid's hometown was destroyed by demons, so she was more afraid of the evil eye than anyone. Lux knew it all too well. Suddenly stars started wobbling in his eyes, and before he knew it, he was knocked out. The last thing he heard was Morga calling out his name. Later that night, Luxe regained consciousness. He argued he was only a little tired, but Morga insisted that he should rest. She started feeding him, but Luxe reassured her he could eat on his own. Suddenly he asked Morga if she wasn't afraid of his evil eye, which confused her because he asked this now. She admitted she was scared at first, but even though it was called evil eye, it was harmless. Because of that, she got used to it. Now she just felt like she was taking care of her selfish little brother. She smiled, saying this is how she felt. Luxe was touched by her statement. Then he jokingly asked if he was the little brother. Morga confirmed he was, since she was older than him. That night, Luxe lay in bed, his mind still occupied with thoughts about his evil eye. Just then, he turned to face his nightstand where he saw a piece of paper peeking out of a book. He pulled it out and saw a wish list, something that the original Luxe must have written. There, he read that he wanted to get revenge on those who underestimated his eyes. Just then, he found that the original Luxe also wanted to be recognized by his father. Most of all, he wanted to be happy. Luxe raised his hand near his eye, falling silent as he grasped what he read. He then shut his eyes. He had decided. The next day, Morga freaked out because Luxe wanted to go to the training ground. She reminded him that last year he gave up after a few minutes, which was something that baffled Luxe himself. He then flexed his stick-like arms, realizing his physique spoke for itself. On top of that, it made sense that Luxe in-game was also a lousy swordsman. However, he had already made up his mind. He then demanded that Morga take him to the training ground. Left with no choice, Morga did as she was told. In the training ground, a bunch of young men gathered, training to become skilled swordsmen. Morga asked what exactly he planned to do, and Luxe replied that he was going to use his evil eye. Morga was confused, so he explained he wanted to try something. Thinking back, in-game Luxe didn't really know how to fully utilize his evil eye. However, this new Luxe did. The evil eye wasn't just for scaring other people. Suddenly, he closed his eyes, then he opened them with immense focus. It was amazing. He could see and feel the soldiers' movements. It was as if they were seeping into his body. As he kept on testing his skill, Morga suddenly informed him that it was time to get back. He was confused because they had just arrived. Suddenly, he noticed that the sun was already setting, which meant his plan might just work. Luxe lurked in the training grounds for the rest of the week. One soldier noticed that he had been going there every day, while another pointed out that he only watched. Suddenly, someone approached Luxe asking if it wasn't time for him to get some exercise. Luxe didn't sense him at all, yet he played it cool and asked who the stranger was. He was Joris, the commanding officer. Luxe grew nervous as he looked at Joris, sensing that he was pretty strong. Joris stooped down to meet Luxe's gaze, asking him if he wanted to be mentored. Suddenly, Luxe asked if he was going to fight him, which somehow baffled the old man. Luxe proudly claimed that he wanted to test his strength. Meanwhile, Morga grew anxious about Luxe's naivety. Joris was a former captain of the Royal Knights until something happened. One could see his strength in the soldiers. Just then, Joris turned his back on Luxe, telling him that he would allow this test. However, he wouldn't take responsibility for Luxe's injuries. Not long after, the two headed to the arena, bringing with them their own swords. The soldiers spectated, unable to believe that this young man was having a mock battle with the commanding officer. They wondered what Luxe was thinking, but they kept quiet and observed. Before the battle began, Luxe took a deep breath. Morga, on the other hand, called Luxe out for his recklessness. Meanwhile, Joris kept a straight face, telling the young man to come with all his might. Luxe suddenly raised his sword, telling Joris that he would take him up on his offer. He suddenly bolted from his spot, making movements that were too fast for the human eye. Morga was shocked, and so were the spectators. They were left wondering what was with his movements. Luxe slashed, meeting Joris's blade with incredible force. The old man was stunned, recognizing Luxe's sword technique. It was the one he learned in the Royal Knights, and he must have passed it on to his soldiers. He then asked Luxe if he had learned it just by watching. It turned out that the evil eye had several powerful abilities, and one of them was the evil eye of observation, which had been enhanced to the limit. Swordsmanship and magic spells could be copied by simply looking at them, as if like a cheat ability. No need for training arcs when your eyeball runs ChatGPT and Google Drive. And so the battle kept on, each of them not backing down. The spectators couldn't believe that Luxe was going toe-to-toe with Joris. Suddenly, Luxe broke out of the fight, trying to catch his breath. He planned to use the Power Slash, a move which confused the spectators. It was a basic skill after all. However, Joris didn't keep his guard down, predicting that Luxe would just use the Power Slash alone. An extraordinary amount of magic power, the true essence of the evil eye, was imbued within. Meanwhile, Luxe mustered all the energy left in him. Being killed and his evil eye being stolen by the resurrected evil king was something he would never allow to happen. He would destroy the original storyline. Of course, there would be no villains, no middle bosses, nothing. If he could do it, he could prevent the Demon King's resurrection and stabilize their world. All that would be left would be the peaceful romance between the heroes and heroines, and he would be watching from afar. He suddenly realized this would make him a mob character, but it would still be great. However, to do that, he needed to get stronger. He would use his evil eye to his advantage. Suddenly, he gripped his sword and readied his stance. He dashed towards Joris and attacked, making the old man kneel as he received the impact. With his sword swinging in the air, Luxe proclaimed that he would become a mob fan who would protect them all. With determination in his heart, he would resist his fate. Luxe lunged forward with fierce determination while Joris held his stance with calm confidence. Joris remained unmoved as Luxe held onto his sword, clearly catching his breath. Just then, the moment of defeat hit Luxe, sending him crashing to the floor and screaming in pain. He could feel his whole body ache, making him wonder what kind of technique he just got hit with. Suddenly, Joris approached him, telling him that he had simply blocked the attack. Luxe trembled at the thought and he asked how the old man did it. Joris admitted that Luxe perfectly mimicked his soldier's movements, but his body was different from that of a regularly trained soldier. In other words, the young man had pushed past his body's limits and he couldn't endure it. Luxe shivered, acknowledging the fact. Man tried to solo the boss with a level 1 character build. He slowly got up, apologizing to Joris for the incident earlier. However, he made it clear that he really wanted to get stronger. He asked Joris if he didn't mind, but before he could finish, the old man already said yes. They would build Luxe's well-trained body from scratch. Luxe thanked Joris and he asked to be taken care of. Several days later, Joris carried on with his duty of training the soldiers. He commanded them to go on 20 more laps, making the soldiers complain about the hellish training. They struggled to catch their breath, claiming that they couldn't take it anymore. One soldier asked Luxe if he could keep up, yet he didn't answer and only kept practicing his swordsmanship skills. He presented them so well that the soldiers commended him for it. Joris, overhearing the conversation, was convinced that it wasn't training. Because of that, he told the soldiers to do 100 swings, shocking them all. Meanwhile, Luxe smirked, knowing Joris's intention behind it. Skills could handle the evil eye, and he just needed to improve endurance. A well-trained body excited him. With that, Luxe spent the whole day improving his physique. The next day, he lay in bed with throbbing pain all over his body. Joris said he had severe muscle pain, while Morga told Luxe that he pushed himself too hard. He had been shut in for a long time, after all. Luxe, on the other hand, was out of his mind and only hallucinated about having a trained body. Joris then told Morga to put him back to training once he was healed. For now, rest was needed, as it was also part of training. That night, as Luxe lay in bed, he thought about how there were only 5 years left until the main game would start. However, he had started walking a different path from the original Luxe. The evil eye would definitely be targeted, and nothing that would happen would come as a surprise. There was also the possibility that the Demon King revival cult would make a move. It looked like becoming a mere mob character wouldn't be easy. On top of that, he still had to worry about a major event approaching before the game started. He couldn't waste a single moment. The next day, Morga searched the entire mansion for Luxe. She asked another maid if she had seen him, and she finally had her answer. He was busy in his study reading about dark magic. Morga suddenly entered the room carrying a tray of snacks. However, she accidentally lost her balance, sending the tray flying. Before she could land, Luxe used his magic to slow everything down. To Morga's surprise, Luxe only prioritized the tray of food, allowing her to crash onto the floor. She served snacks and got served by Newton's law. After the incident, Morga pointed out that he was studying magic. Luxe explained that he wanted to effectively use the time while his body healed. However, something bothered him, so Morga asked if there was a problem. Luxe shared that he could only use dark magic, prompting Morga to ask what the issue was. Luxe wanted to use flashier magic, but all he could do was support magic and mostly debuffs. Hearing that, Morga reminded him he was lucky to be able to use any magic. This struck Luxe, realizing that she wasn't one of the lucky ones. Morga then reminded him that normally people can't use magic and she was jealous of it. She then recalled that there was a senior maid who could use wind magic, and it seemed convenient for drying laundry. It truly was helpful in daily life. Suddenly, Luxe changed his perspective, thinking there was no point in wishing for what he couldn't have. He would focus on dark magic from now on. Just then, he told Morga that his fighting style involved debuffing the enemy while using a sword. Morga was excited to hear this, and she volunteered to help him. Luxe continued studying, quietly enjoying a peaceful moment with tea and sandwiches. He complimented the sandwiches for being delicious, making Morga beam with pride because she made them. He thanked her for it and she bashfully laughed. However, thanking her wasn't enough and he had a gift for her. Suddenly, Luxe used his imitation spell, using dark magic to replicate anything. Normally, one would need to observe the original for a long period. But with the evil eye's super observation, it was easy. To Morga's surprise, a sandwich formed under the seal from Luxe's hand. However, her fascination turned to horror when the sandwich's final form was revealed. It was pitch black. That thing had lore. Luxe was embarrassed seeing how it turned out. He was supposed to have the materials prepared, but he made them with his mana instead. Morga noticed that the sandwich was crumbling, so Luxe explained that this is what would happen if he converted his mana into material. As expected, it wasn't pretty useful. If his mana ran out, it would disappear. Just then, he realized that the material made with mana wasn't perfect. This made him question the possibility of replicating something made purely from mana. He was deep in thought, trying to piece information together. As he remained focused, he didn't notice Morga calling out to him in concern. Just then, he snapped back into reality and claimed that his plan might just work. He asked Morga where the maid who could use wind magic was, and she replied that she might be in the kitchen. Morga asked if he was going, and Luxe confirmed it. She worriedly wondered what she should do with the black sandwich, but Luxe was too occupied with his plans to even answer. As she was left alone in the room, she stared at the black sandwich, puzzled about what she should do with such a peculiar gift. Luxe's days of magic research and basic training continued. Finally, he was strong enough to return to the training grounds. It had been a while, and he was excited for a real battle. Shortly after, Joris announced the start of the fight, prompting Luxe and his opponent to attack simultaneously. Their swords clashed, and they fiercely gave it everything they had. The soldier apologized to the young master as he won't hold out. Luxe smirked in return, saying he would also go all out. Just then he pulled back, doing a backflip with immense speed. He was caught off guard by his own actions, realizing that his body just moved as he had imagined. He wasn't out of breath at all, and he didn't feel tired. He smiled, knowing it was the result of training and a well-trained body. To his shock, the soldier suddenly swung his sword, complimenting him for his moves. Luckily, Luxe snapped back into reality to defend himself. The soldier admitted that he couldn't compete with Luxe in terms of skill, but he still had the upper hand in power. Luxe was forced to kneel under the weight of the soldier's attack, and he knew he had to create some distance. Just then, Joris called out to Luxe, asking him if that was all he had. He reminded the young man that his potential was far beyond what he was presenting. Luxe told himself that he wasn't holding back, but if he were to rely on Joris's word, then he would go for it. He suddenly bolted backward, creating distance between him and the soldier. The soldier stood firm, reminding him that he wouldn't win just by running away. Then, in a surge of energy, Luxe activated an imitation invoke, a technique that allowed him to replicate a storm through imitation. With the evil eye enhancing his perception, he mimicked the forces of a raging storm. Channeling that insight, he released a devastating death cyclone. Wind howled through the battlefield, and the soldier gritted his teeth against the pressure. Despite his strength, he was ultimately overwhelmed, crashing to the ground in defeat. Joris called the match, bringing the battle to a close. The soldier claimed it was too strong, and he yielded. After that, the soldier told Luxe that he might be a magic swordsman, but the young man refused to believe it. The soldier then admitted that he and the others wouldn't stand a chance against him. Luxe shared that he always wanted to try it, but he was glad it worked. The soldier praised him for his talent, which was also scary. As the tension settled, Joris approached Luxe, asking if it wasn't unfair to use magic. Luxe awkwardly admitted it truly was. Just then, Joris laughed and said he was kidding, adding that it was acceptable for real combat. Above all, Luxe's moves were the result of his hard work. Luxe was dumbfounded, touched by Joris's words. The other soldiers also praised him, saying he was doing well for surviving such hellish training. Luxe laughed awkwardly, though he knew deep inside that he had almost died. Just then, the soldier who was his opponent scruffed his hair, making him chuckle. As they left, Luxe wondered if he had gained some power to protect the evil eye. One thing was for sure, the mob character plan had made progress. Just then, Joris called for their attention, announcing an even harsher program for the next day. The mere thought of it made everyone horrified. To be a mob character that would watch over the heroines while protecting his evil eye, Luxe underwent rigorous training in swordsmanship. He sacrificed sleep to study magic, and the results made him look like a ragged person. Morga freaked out when she witnessed the state he was in. Luxe asked what was wrong as he was busy researching magic. Morga merely acknowledged his statement. Then she bid him good luck. Later that night, dinner was served, and Luxe made sure to pray before eating. However, as soon as he was done, he wasted no time devouring everything in sight. He ate well and acknowledged his fulfilling life, which was far from his previous one. He then turned to the maids, thanking them for preparing such delectable foods. However, they seemed more terrified than pleased by his gratitude. Sensing the tension, Luxe wondered what was up with the atmosphere. Morga frowned as she approached him, informing him he was to blame for their reaction. He couldn't get rid of his eccentric image, which only confused Luxe. In the past, he used every opportunity he could to associate it with something evil. When he saw meat, he sacrificed it to summon a demon. He also drew a magic circle using ketchup and created a voodoo doll using a piece of bread. This man out here casting spells with a subway foot long. Luxe slapped his forehead when he heard those stories, wondering what else he had done in the past. This was now the result of his actions, which somehow evoked a familiar feeling. In his past life, his classmates looked at him that way. He was often sick and he didn't go to school that much. Whenever he did, he was being looked at. It turned out that he and the real Luxe had quite similar circumstances. Luxe with his evil eye and he with his sickness. Just then, Luxe tried to shake the memories out of his mind, not knowing that he was freaking out the maids with the gestures he made. Later on, as Morga and Luxe walked through the halls, she told him that all the maids still had a strong prejudice against him. Luxe didn't mind, as he was used to being looked at like that. Just then he noticed that Morga fell quiet, so he asked what was wrong. She admitted she was frustrated knowing that Luxe was trying to change himself, yet no one had noticed it. Luxe was stunned, then he thanked her. However, he reminded her that it would take time to regain the maid's trust. Morga remained defiant, saying it wouldn't take any time. Luxe asked what she meant, then mentioned that it would be hard to make people understand him. Morga argued it wasn't difficult, then pointed at him, saying his appearance was to blame. He didn't look good at all, which baffled Luxe. Morga added that he had such a suspicious look that people misunderstood and thought he was just like he used to be. He was creepy, scary, and not clean either. Luxe was starting to get hurt by her words and he called her out on being too blunt. He mentioned that he takes a bath every day, then asked if looks were truly that important. He believed it was the inner self that mattered. Morga hated to break this to him, but she believed he looked like the Demon King's stooge. It looked like his goal of being a mob character could be at risk now. He suddenly thought about the original Luxe, making him freak out. He suddenly bowed on the floor, pleading with Morga to do something about it. Morga didn't fail to disappoint, telling him to leave it to her. Later that day, Melon, the Zeldia family's fashion leader, tended to Luxe. She asked him what his request was and he said he wanted to change his appearance. She leaned closer, asking what he wanted specifically. Luxe stuttered, then said he only wanted to look presentable. This response made both of the girls shoot him death stares. Melon told Morga that Luxe had a fashion IQ of 5 and she believed he was trash. Morga whispered in response, mentioning that she had already told her. Luxe, on the other hand, wondered what he had done wrong. Just then, Melon mocked Luxe for not caring about appearances and simply wanting to look presentable. Those thoughts led him to the situation they were in. Luxe shivered, trying to explain that he didn't say those things. The girls were furious, preaching that being fashionable couldn't be achieved overnight. Being clean and looking clean were completely different things. Luxe was overwhelmed by their aggression and he worriedly apologized for his naivety. He then pleaded with them to teach him the basics of fashion from scratch. Bro got bullied into a makeover. After that horrifying incident, Melon gave Luxe a makeover. She cut his hair, made him try different products, and also plucked his eyebrows. As night rolled in, Luxe relaxed with a face mask, thinking that being fashionable was hard. This made him empathize with male models, as they seemed to put a lot of work into themselves. He had a lot of work to do, and if he let his guard down, he might become the Demon King's stooge. Just then, Luxe recalled something as he mentioned the Demon King. Many people were scared of his evil eye, and most of all, it didn't suit mob characters. If he could recall, the Demon King in the game didn't always have the evil eye in use. Suddenly, Morga entered his room, wanting to ask about their plans for the next day. To her surprise, she caught him trying to speak to his evil eye, telling it to calm down. She asked what he was doing, and he explained that he was only trying to see if he could switch his evil eye off. Morga wondered if it was possible, and Luxe said it wouldn't be easy, yet it was possible. Hearing that, Morga volunteered to help him do some research on the matter. And so Luxe's daily life became busier. One day he prepared himself for a big event. He dressed in his finest suit and tidied up, swooning all the maids. He bid them goodbye, but the maids couldn't help but be upset about his departure. They were even asking when he would be back. Luxe was surprised, and then he explained that he was going to defeat some monsters. At that moment, Luxe realized that Morga was right. Appearances truly are important. The maids continued praising him, especially his beautiful blue eyes. Morga was proud to witness her creation, yet she grew concerned as the maids volunteered to wash Luxe's back. She quickly jumped into action, fending off the maids and telling them not to get carried away. Morga out here gatekeeping her exfoliation privileges. Luxe's mob character plan had progressed one step further, and after several months since he was reincarnated, he went outside to defeat monsters. One of the main characters of Blaze Fantasy, Eliza Carroll, would soon meet Luxe face to face. In the Zeldia territory, at the old capital of Gran Roselio, Luxe was accompanied by Joris. The monster subjugation finished much earlier than he had expected. Joris agreed, but he believed it didn't turn out to be training fit for the young master. Just then, a girl approached Luxe, asking if he was from the Zeldia family. Suddenly, Joris and the other soldiers kneeled before the girl's presence, shocking Luxe. The girl, Alessia, smiled at Luxe and said it was nice to see him again. Luxe hadn't expected to meet a character who appeared in the main game. This girl was none other than Alicia Coral, the daughter of the Coral family, one of the big three. She was the older sister of the main heroine, Eliza Coral. The thought of Alicia being Eliza's older sister made Luxe nervous all of a sudden, but he tried to calm himself down. He stuttered, struggling to greet her. Alessia asked if he was truly Luxe as she noticed changes in him. She leaned in closer, making Luxe even more anxious. However, Alessia wasn't bothered by their closeness, and she proceeded to tease him for becoming handsome. This made Luxe feel giddy inside, knowing he worked hard on improving himself. Just then, Alessia mentioned that her sister Eliza was also with her. Luxe was surprised as he hadn't expected to meet Eliza that soon. Just then, Alessia called out to Eliza, telling her to come over and say hello. Meanwhile, Luxe grew uneasy, telling Alessia he wasn't ready yet. Just then, Eliza stepped out from hiding and walked towards them. Each step she took made Luxe sweat in anticipation. She kept her head low and asked her sister what she wanted. Just then, her meek demeanor disappeared in a snap, and she started ranting about her sister being too loud. She shook her head, making it clear that she didn't want to say hello. Alessia laughed, apologizing to Luxe about her sister's behavior. However, Luxe wasn't bothered by her sassiness. Instead, he was starstruck. Tears started to well in his eyes as he grasped the situation. This was Eliza, and she would never get sweet with anyone other than the MC. This Sun act was really the Eliza he knew. Suddenly, Alessia asked Luxe to keep Eliza company. Luxe was shocked for a moment, but he realized this might not be so bad after all. He needed to use this opportunity to avoid a villainous future. He needed to gain Eliza's trust, so he casually approached her, saying it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Eliza only stared at him, making him realize that he might have just grinned too much. Eliza remained quiet, then she asked who he was. Luxe was distraught, and he desperately reminded her he was Luxe Zeldia. Eliza couldn't believe he was the Luxe she knew, recalling what he used to look like. As she observed the changes in his appearance, Luxe nervously tried to tell her she was too close. Just then, Luxe realized that Eliza was not like her sister. She liked to look down on others. His interpretation was perfect, and he was convinced Eliza was exactly like that. Suddenly, Eliza leaned in closely, interrogating him about something she noticed. She asked where his evil eye was, and Luxe explained he could turn them off. Eliza then told him that if he had done that earlier, he wouldn't have had to go through any trouble. Luxe was shocked, realizing that Eliza just might be worried about him. He called her kind for doing so, which only made Eliza embarrassed. She screamed that no one was worried about him. Then she took back her statement, realizing that using no one would be an exaggeration. Girl trying to be toxic but got hit with the empath update. Luxe felt warm inside, happy that Eliza was good all along. Eliza turned red with Luxe's constant grinning, so she pushed him and warned him to stop it. Later on, the two took a stroll around the area. Eliza asked him about his swordsmanship training, then she mocked him for the sudden interest. Luxe, on the other hand, was worried that he might get addicted to being looked down on by Eliza. Just then, Eliza told him she was curious about it and she wanted him to show her. Luxe couldn't believe she was interested, but Eliza explained how he was looking so raggedy a year ago. Finally, Luxe agreed to show her the move he learned and practiced recently. He suddenly launched himself forward with incredible speed and force, kicking off the ground with enough power to send a shockwave through the air. Eliza, standing nearby, was visibly surprised by his abrupt action. She stuttered, asking what she had just witnessed. She couldn't even see a thing. She asked how much he had done in such a short time, but Luxe didn't answer. He was too immersed in his performance, and he noticed it felt wrong. He then pointed towards the aftermath of his move, where a nearby wall was cracked and damaged. Eliza was surprised, but her expression changed all of a sudden, as if she acknowledged his skill. She told him he did well for the Luxe she knew. Later on, Luxe asked Eliza why she was in the Zeldia territory, and she explained she came to see His Highness. Luxe buffered for a moment, wondering if she was referring to the prince of the country. Eliza was concerned, asking who else it could be. Eliza's eyes suddenly started forming hearts, saying His Highness was really wonderful. At that moment, Luxe remembered that Eliza was in love with His Highness around that time. Just then, Eliza's expression turned sour. Her big sister didn't tell her a thing, and she was trying to meet the prince. Eliza asked if the situation was terrible, but he was too lost in his thoughts to answer. He was starting to piece everything together, and he had a bad feeling about it. Just then, Eliza wondered where her big sister was. She decided to look for her, but Luxe stopped her. He suggested that if the two of them were planning to meet, it could imply that they were already lovers. Eliza was stunned, then she looked at him naively, asking why. Luxe hesitated to respond, especially when she asked with such innocent eyes. He wondered how he should answer, but Eliza didn't wait for him and decided to leave. He told her to wait, but she only warned him to stop following her. Just then, Eliza's eyes widened in shock as she witnessed something. Was Luxe's bad feeling right all along? Eliza caught her sister locking lips with the prince. She was shaken, asking herself what they were doing. She followed the ship and ended up sinking. Meanwhile, Luxe felt the tension, thinking to himself that this was the worst. Alessia and the prince were classmates and lovers, and they had been engaged a few years ago. Naturally, Eliza was not a love interest for the prince, and if Luxe had to say it, it would be her unrequited love. And now, Eliza had followed them on their secret date, so Alessia pushed the obstacle to Luxe. Just then, Luxe tried calling out to Eliza, but she was already down in the dumps, saying she knew she wasn't good enough. Her eyes were filled with tears, realizing she couldn't beat her sister. Luxe was stunned, recalling that Eliza's inferiority to her sister was an unavoidable element of her character. Her sister, Alessia, was the perfect superhuman. She was top-notch in everything, be it academic or magic. On top of that, she had a good-natured personality, something that everyone loved. Eliza, on the other hand, was not as skillful as her sister. Compared to her, Eliza's physique had become less and less attractive. Sis got nerfed in the womb. When the game campaign began, Eliza was saved when she met the protagonist. Until then, she should endure another 5 years. Luxe looked at her with determination, mentally cheering her on. However, he suddenly got concerned when she started crying. That was when he realized that making her wait 5 years in agony would be brutal. Eliza felt stupid, accepting that there would be no way to beat her sister. Luxe said it wasn't true, and she wasn't losing to anyone. However, Eliza snapped, asking what he knew about her. Luxe replied that he knew her. In fact, he knew everything about her. Eliza was confused. Then she warned him not to talk to her like that because he creeped her out. Luxe argued he was being serious, which only made Eliza angrier. She demanded he tell her where she was better than her big sister. Luxe took a deep breath, then he proceeded to explain. He knew that as an aristocrat, Eliza secretly worked hard at swordsmanship. She wasn't good at it, but she had to keep trying to protect her people. Eliza frowned, looking at her calloused hands that reflected the harsh truth. Luxe continued, saying how he knew she treated her servants equally regardless of their status. He knew that she was kind to animals and children. After suddenly laughing, she would glare to hide her embarrassment. She would use harsh words, but he knew she actually regretted it afterward. Luxe reminded Eliza that it was not about winning or losing. She had her own unique qualities that no one else had, and those were the things he loved about her. Luxe screamed it at the top of his lungs, carrying the sentiments of the other players out there. Man's out here acting like her Spotify Wrapped. He seemed to be pleased with his performance, but Eliza was terrified. At that moment, Luxe realized he overdid it. It was too much even for him. Just then, Eliza started blushing, saying he was creepy. Luxe, on the other hand, felt like he was melting, acknowledging Eliza's words. However, she suddenly turned to him with a big smile, saying that she felt a little bit better. She thanked him, which somehow relieved Luxe. Now that she was feeling better, he urged her to go with him. He took her hand, dragging her along. Eliza was shocked, asking where they were going. He only smiled as they ran, saying they would get revenge for the frustration she felt. At the back of Luxe's mind, he knew he would do anything for his heroine. Luxe decided to set things up for Eliza. They ran to where Alicia and the prince were, pretending to be children who knew nothing. This was a subtle attack for Eliza's sake. He also wanted her to talk to the prince as much as possible, but this only sounded good in his head. He suddenly whispered to Eliza's ear that she wasn't talking to the prince at all, which shocked her. Her cheeks were flushed, and she told him not to whisper in her ear out of nowhere. Luxe was surprised by her behavior, and he wondered what it could mean. However, he shrugged off the thought, convincing himself Eliza was just nervous in front of the prince. With a hint of doubt in his mind, his first encounter with the heroine came to an end. Later on, Luxe and his companions traveled home. As he sat inside his carriage, he still couldn't believe he had met Eliza. He wondered who he would meet next, and he couldn't contain his excitement. When he got home, something shocked him. His brother Dennis was coming home. Luxe let out a string of curse words, saying it was a whole different matter. Morga, who was standing nearby, tried calling out to him in concern. Luxe's brother Dennis had unknown details about him. Luxe's concern was the fact that his mother committed suicide due to the shock of giving birth to a child of the evil eye. Luxe and Dennis's sibling relationship couldn't possibly be good. Luxe shivered at the thought, convinced that his brother hated him. Just then, someone appeared from behind him, asking why he would hate him. Luxe's life flashed through his eyes, seeing his brother before him. He was so shocked that he fell to the floor. Luxe felt awkward, so Dennis took over the conversation, apologizing for keeping them all waiting. He then smiled cheerfully, announcing that Dennis Zeldia was finally back. He obnoxiously assumed that Luxe was lonely without him, but he told his little brother not to worry, for he was finally back. He announced this with so much vigor that it crept Luxe out. Luxe was expecting a boss fight, not a Disney Channel reunion. He stared at his brother with a mortified expression, asking what was up with this man. He had already said the same thing twice. Suddenly, Dennis kneeled to meet his gaze, pointing out something about his appearance. Luxe knew he was talking about his eye, so he attempted to explain himself. However, before he could do so, Dennis complimented his outfit, pleased that he was dressed like a proper gentleman. Dennis was so overjoyed as Luxe now looked like him. Meanwhile, Luxe was relieved, realizing that his brother was only talking about his clothes. Dennis said he was wonderfully dressed, so Luxe thanked him. At the back of Luxe's head though, he couldn't help but notice that his brother was being redundant. As Luxe observed Dennis's behavior, he noticed that he didn't show any signs of disliking him. This made him wonder if he was actually a nice person. Later that night, the two brothers had dinner together. There, Dennis shared that he once had a friend who looked at him with jealousy in his eyes. Dennis reached out his hands to him, and the next thing he knew, he got sent to the principal's office. He was then told, "Of course it's the Zeldia family's kid." He went on and on with his stories, making Luxe realize that he talked way too much. He wondered what was up with his catchphrase, which had driven Luxe crazy. He also hadn't done anything else but brag. As Dennis yapped endlessly, he casually mentioned something about his lightning attribute, which sparked Luxe's interest. Luxe redirected the conversation, asking his brother about his lightning attribute. Dennis went on to explain that lightning was a rare attribute, and throughout history there had only been a few people who had used it. Dennis boasted he was one of them, all while overusing his cringe catchphrase. Big Bro's acting a lil cringe. Meanwhile, Luxe was shocked to know that his brother had a lightning attribute. He absolutely had to copy it with his evil eye. He couldn't possibly pass on such a cool skill. Just then, Luxe asked if he could see his lightning magic in action, but Dennis only said he would if the chance presented itself. Luxe demanded to see it now, but Dennis argued it was not something to be shown off. However, Luxe didn't yield, and he flashed the cutest look in his eyes to convince his brother. Inevitably, Dennis fell for it, and he agreed to Luxe's request. After dinner, the two set out for the yard. There, Luxe asked what he would show him, and Dennis explained that he'd start with the basic one, Thunderbolt. Luxe pondered, then his eyes lit up with stars, convinced it was something awesome. As he waited, he prepared his evil eye, waiting to copy everything. Dennis raised his scepter, announcing for Luxe to feast his eyes upon his rare magic. He proudly screamed, "Thunderbolt!" But only a small flash of light appeared. It disappeared instantly, making Luxe disappointed. He smiled awkwardly, asking if that was it. This is what happens when you give theater kids magic. Dennis couldn't believe what happened, and he looked at Luxe with embarrassment. Luxe quickly hid the disappointment on his face, praising his brother for being amazing. However, Dennis could see through the lies. He closed his eyes, acknowledging he failed. The next day, Luxe walked through the corridors with Morga, saying how much of a letdown the previous night was. However, he gave his brother some grace, telling himself he was the one who had his hopes up. Just then, he saw Dennis coming out of a nearby room. He approached him and asked what he was doing, and Dennis replied that it was a little bit something. Luxe noticed Dennis was sweating, and he was trying to catch his breath. He then looked at the room and welcomed himself inside. Inside, there were tremendous amounts of magic traces. Morga asked if that was the result of Dennis practicing magic, and Luxe confirmed it, seeing no other explanation. His brother was definitely putting in effort, but there was nothing he could do for him. Just then, Morga created fire in her palm, warning Luxe to watch his step. Luxe thanked her, then asked if it was fire magic. Morga proudly said yes, which shocked Luxe. He horrifyingly asked how she was able to use magic. Morga hesitated to explain, but the revelation soon surfaced. She ate the sandwich. Luxe couldn't believe she swallowed that burnt food imitation. However, Morga didn't deny it, and she explained she had fire magic after consuming it. Luxe wondered how it happened, but most importantly, why. He had no recollection of that in his memory. With that thought in mind, Luxe created another one of those sandwiches, deciding to use it. 1 month later, Luxe followed his brother to the yard, asking what he wanted to show him. However, Dennis didn't answer and only told him to follow. All this time, Luxe had been mixing food copies into his brother's food this past month. If Morga could do that much, surely his brother could too. Luxe out here feeding his brother EXP potions disguised as grilled cheese. Just then, Dennis prepared his sword and he cast a Judgment Thunder attack. Luxe's evil eye activated, and he couldn't believe the top-level lightning spell his brother just cast. A powerful flash of lightning erupted from Dennis's scepter, creating a massive crater on the ground. Luxe's eyes widened in disbelief, saying there was no way. He had experimented with food copies, but he didn't think it could give someone that much power. Somehow, this made him worried, and he still couldn't make sense of how this happened. Meanwhile, Dennis was cockier than ever, claiming he was terrified of his own talent. Luxe laughed awkwardly, but he knew Dennis should really be commended. He then gazed at his brother's bandaged hand, which reflected his hard work. Then, out of nowhere, Dennis asked about Luxe's evil eye. Luxe was stunned, seeing that the enviable talk about his evil eye had finally come. He then explained to his brother that it could actually be turned off. Dennis asked if he achieved that on his own, and Luxe confirmed it while also asking why. Just then, Dennis said he shouldn't burden himself too hard. He believed Luxe was talented, but he should always remember that he had a brother he could rely on. He smiled, proudly reassuring his little brother that he would always be there for him. Meanwhile, Luxe smiled, acknowledging his brother's promise. Later that night, Morga praised Luxe for a job well done. Luxe crashed on his bed, thanking Morga for going along. She then talked about how glad she was that it went well, and Luxe agreed with her. He then recalled Dennis's words, and he was relieved to have a brother he could rely on. Just then, a maid delivered a letter addressed to Luxe. His eyes widened in excitement as he held the letter. An invitation to the 10th anniversary. This was a super important event that would serve as the prologue to the game, and the characters would all gather together in the royal capital. There would be a swordsmanship tournament, dance parties, and a plethora of other events. The game Blaze Fantasy was finally getting into full swing. The royal capital soon celebrated its 10th anniversary. The staff of the Zeldia family strolled through the bustling streets admiring the jam-packed event. It was a festival for the whole country after all. Morga looked back at Luxe to see his reaction, but he wasn't as excited as they were. He started crying, which shocked Morga. It turned out that he was crying over the fact that he had come so far with days of steady training. Now it was finally time for Blazfan to start. Not long after, everyone gathered in the arena. It was time for the sword fighting competition, and Luxe was among the competitors who wanted to test their skills. Morga then bowed before him, wishing him luck. Suddenly, Dennis sneaked in to see him. Luxe was surprised, wondering if he had come to cheer for him. True enough, Dennis came to do just that, and he even had matching props for it. He then told Luxe to fight in a way that wouldn't shame the Zeldia family. However, the sheer irony made Luxe question his word choice. Just then, Morga announced that the tournament table was out, and Luxe quickly came closer to see. He scanned the list and landed on a familiar name, Claire. Luxe had expected Claire Wingate to be there. She was one of Blazfan's main heroines, and she was the daughter of the Royal Knights General. Her swordsmanship skills were the best in the series. They would face off in the finals, but this made Luxe wonder just how far he could go against her. Just then he started laughing maniacally, which frightened Morga. Luxe grinned and blushed, barely containing his excitement. Meanwhile, Morga asked him if he was okay, seeing that he was crying and laughing at the same time. After that, Luxe proceeded to the match's venue. As he made his way through a tunnel, he crossed paths with Eliza. He told her it had been a while, then he asked why she was around. She suddenly acted defensive, asking why she couldn't be there. To her surprise, Luxe asked if she was there to cheer for him, which made her face turn red. She nervously explained that she was not participating in the sword fight and she had free time. Just then, she stopped mid-sentence when she noticed the "I understand" look flashing on Luxe's face. She anxiously warned him to stop it, then told him to win, as she would be watching. Luxe smiled, then he thanked her while he hurriedly left. Luxe felt happy as he thought about the people who cheered him on. The once hated Luxe had come that far, and he was glad to have worked so hard. Not long after, Luxe stood in the arena for his match. He wondered who his first opponent was, and upon spotting him, he immediately noticed his sword. The opponent complained that they put an injury prevention spell on it, and they wanted to use a real sword. Luxe remained guarded, knowing his opponent was an unknown character. He then acted friendly, saying that a real sword would be bad. This was a place to test their swordsmanship after all. However, the opponent warned Luxe not to talk as if he were human, then he called him a child of the evil eye. He continued, telling Luxe that an abomination like him was the very thing he would want to swing his sword into. You know what? Give Luxe a real sword so he could dice the life out of this guy. Luxe furiously retaliated, but the boy cut him off, telling the referee to keep his eye on the evil-eyed one. He then laughed at Luxe, saying they didn't know what kind of underhanded tactic he would make. Luxe defended himself, saying he would never do such a thing. However, his opponent only shrugged, making Luxe fume in anger. He then announced that he was Luxe Zeldia, and he would, on his name, fight fair and square. His opponent kept on mocking him, saying that a Demon King minion had no name to swear. After that, the referee announced that the swordsmanship tournament's first round of the 12th match would now begin. The opponent suddenly screamed, which confused Luxe. The boy then showcased his magic, claiming that it was time to exterminate monsters. Dennis was stunned by his magical power, and Joris agreed, noting that it was more than any of their soldiers. The boy was Gellius Malaysia, and he was indeed a descendant of a noble family comparable to the Big Three families. Morga argued that when it came to magical power, Luxe was just as talented. Joris agreed, adding that the magical power of his evil eye was on a different level. However, Joris's eyes widened in shock when he realized that Luxe wasn't using his magical powers. Gellius asked Luxe if he was intimidated by his magical power. Then he went on about how he would have really preferred a real sword for an evil-eyed monster. Dennis warned his brother to look out while Morga and the other maids gasped. Gellius launched toward Luxe, telling him to take the wrath of his hyper slash. To his surprise, Luxe parried the attack, leaving Gellius and everyone else shocked. Gellius angrily asked what he did, so Luxe agreed to tell him. However, he mocked the boy, asking him if he really wanted to talk to the child with evil eyes. Gellius cursed under his breath, then he abruptly charged with 2 consecutive hyperslash attacks. Luxe successfully deflected each attack, leaving Gellius wondering how it was possible. He tried catching his breath while asking himself why his attack didn't connect. Meanwhile, Dennis asked himself if Luxe used any magic. Joris, on the other hand, only laughed. He knew this was merely the result of the young master's daily training. Dennis was shocked, unable to believe it. Gellius's power was simply being evaded with Luxe's skill. In the arena, Luxe taunted Gellius, telling him that even though he was born into a privileged family, he would never reach him with just his swordsmanship talent. He then swung his sword toward Gellius's face, making it quiver from the immense force. He was sent flying and then he crashed on the floor. The match was over in an instant and Luxe was declared the winner. He then turned back for a moment, asking Gellius if he wasn't glad that they didn't use real swords. Bro ate with that. After the match, Morga praised Luxe for a job well done, while Eliza was glad it worked out. Morga seemed to want Eliza to be as loud as her, but the noble woman hesitated. Just then, she noticed that Luxe was leaving the arena with a gloomy aura. Meanwhile, Luxe placed his hand on his eye, thinking about Gellius's harsh words. As he joined the crowd, he overheard people talking about how he beat Gellius. They believed he used the evil eye to win, or he must have used some underhanded tactics. Luxe was stunned, but he told himself not to let it get the best of him. He would just let them have it, despite them thinking that he cheated. Later on, Luxe returned for the second match, but the referee told him that his opponent had withdrawn. He won by default, and the same thing happened in his third match. This made him wonder why no one wanted to go on a match with him. Just then, two boys laughed at Luxe, saying he was the despicable evil eye holder. Luxe desperately explained that he didn't use his evil eye at all, which only made the boys laugh. Oh my Shayla, one said that they didn't know for sure while the other teased Luxe that they would run. Luxe argued that he really didn't use his evil eye, yet the boys only secured their distance from him. They believed that no one would want to fight a creep with an evil eye and he should have just withdrawn. Luxe was distraught, raising his hand toward his eye. He guessed he really couldn't change fate. He got reincarnated and thought he could start over, but how different was he from the old days? Luxe slowly left the venue, thinking he was the only one who thought he would make it that far. Later on, the final match began. Luxe had won by default except in his first match. His supporters looked at him with concern, sensing he wasn't as lively as he was before. The referee then announced that his opponent had won all her matches in seconds, and she was none other than Claire Wingate. Luxe wondered where she was, and he started to worry that even she didn't want to go on a match with him. Then, out of nowhere, Claire apologized for the delay. She leapt into the arena, shocking Luxe. Sis was late, but still had time to serve. She hadn't had the chance to get warmed up for the match, so she was just unwinding a bit. She then turned to Luxe, introducing herself as Claire Wingate. She asked if he was Lux Zeldia, but he didn't answer. Instead, Luxe asked if she was sure about going up against him. Claire was silent for a moment, then she told him she had one condition. Before she could say what it was, Luxe anxiously promised not to use underhanded tactics and he would fight fair and square. However, Claire had a different idea in mind. She only wanted him to give it his all. He didn't go all out in his first match, which made Claire happy. It was just as she had expected. She also challenged him to use his evil eye, baffling Luxe. He hesitated, but Claire cut him off and reminded him to go all out. Luxe yielded, then he activated his evil eye. He suddenly got conscious, asking if it wasn't creepy. Claire only chuckled and said no, believing it was the same as hers. Luxe asked her what she meant, so she leaned very closely to his face, explaining that they had the same straightforward eyes that sought strength. She reiterated that she had the same eyes too. She didn't break eye contact, asking if she was wrong. Luxe was speechless, looking back at her while muttering her name. Claire then turned her back on him, telling him his evil eye didn't matter. She quickly took off her cape, challenging him to show her his real sword. "Ma'am, this is a Wendy's." Luxe smiled, now remembering that Claire had always been like that. After that, the referee told them to take their positions. In an instant, both emitted incredibly strong auras, showcasing their capabilities. Luxe playfully thanked Claire, then warned her that he would go all out for her. Claire didn't back down, saying that it was good and that they should have fun. The finals began, and both of them charged forward, determined to let the blade clash determine the pinnacle. The match began, and everyone was on edge. Two of the spectators mentioned that the final match was between the Knight Commander's daughter and the Evil Eye Kid. One asked if it wasn't a cakewalk, as they heard that Luxe cheated. Furious, they started jeering, telling the Evil Eye Kid to get lost and lose already. Morga and Eliza overheard their harsh remarks, and they couldn't help but be worried for Luxe. Meanwhile, Luxe told himself not to mind the haters and focus on the fight instead. He would respond to Claire's feelings by going all out. Just then, he and Claire clashed swords, each of them refusing to yield. Eventually, they broke contact, trying to regain their stance. Luxe got a bit nervous, but he had expected that Claire would be this strong. If he let his guard down even for a moment, she would strike him down in an instant. Just then, Claire's movement stunned Luxe. She asked what he was so surprised about, oblivious to the fact that she was swinging so fast that Luxe could barely make sense of things. Luxe grew more tense, unable to believe that Claire hadn't even gone all out yet. Just then, Claire turned her back on him and he called out to her. Claire looked at him ominously, reminding him that she had told him to go all out. She started complaining, saying he was boring her. Luxe tried to catch his breath, asking if she was serious. He was going all out this whole time. Just then, he started to sharpen his focus, reminding himself that he hadn't done that yet. He apologized to Claire, saying that he was only presenting about 80% of his power. Claire was skeptical and asked if he was serious, so Luxe quickly took it back and admitted he only showed 50%. She was relieved to hear it. Luxe then promised that he would go all out from then on, so Claire should go all out as well. Claire remained skeptical, but she acknowledged his words. She acted serious all of a sudden, telling Luxe that she was counting on him. Then, out of nowhere, Claire darted toward him with immense speed, telling him that she didn't want him to lose immediately. Luxe was stunned, amazed by her speed that he barely saw coming. Claire exhaled, then delivered an immensely powerful blow. Luxe was able to receive it with his sword, but he was forced down to his knees. At that moment, Luxe realized that Claire's sword moved like she was dancing. The crowd suddenly erupted with cheers, screaming Claire's name. Meanwhile, Morga and Eliza were worried sick, unable to imagine what would happen if the match kept on. Dennis, on the other hand, asked Joris if Luxe was going to be okay. Joris believed he wouldn't last long, but he could get through it and had a chance at winning. In the arena, Luxe struggled to receive Claire's relentless attacks. Claire asked if he was sure about ending the match like that, which somehow astounded Luxe. Suddenly, Claire moved so fast that it seemed like she was teleporting. She asked Luxe if he could see, but he was still buffering from what had just happened. Claire's out here running on 5G while Luxe is still stuck on prepaid load. From the crowd, Dennis screamed that Claire was behind Luxe. The girls were also just as terrified, screaming out Luxe's name in concern. Meanwhile, Claire closed her eyes in disappointment, saying it was a shame. She prepared to deliver the finishing blow and said that she had expected a better fight out of him. Just as she swung her sword, Luxe unexpectedly leapt, narrowly dodging the attack. Claire was shocked, and so were the spectators. Luxe then apologized to Claire, admitting he had been a bore. Suddenly, he flashed his evil eye and said that he needed time to adjust to her full power. Claire sensed the heaviness of his aura, making her tense up. Meanwhile, Luxe prepared his stance, saying it was time for him to go all out. He suddenly bolted from where he was standing, swinging his sword at Claire without hesitation. Claire was able to deflect the attack, and she noticed that Luxe had copied her sword dance. Luxe apologized, explaining that it was just how the evil eye worked. Bro just straight up went for plagiarism. However, Claire only scoffed, wondering why he was even saying sorry. This was what she wanted, and it made Luxe much more interesting. Claire had been bored all this time against her swordsmanship master, her father, and the knight commander. Before she knew it, they were no longer a match for her. The sword that she loved so much had become something that she mastered in solitude. So, she had been waiting all this time. She was able to land safely after deflecting Luxe's attack. Luxe was shocked, realizing that her stance had changed once more. Just then, she lunged into the air and delivered a devastating swing, making the floor beneath them crack. Luxe managed to counter it, but he couldn't deny that it was a powerful strike that was completely different from what she showed a few moments ago. Just then, Luxe wondered if Claire had devised a new swordsmanship in the midst of the battle, one that would surpass him. However, he didn't back down. If that was how Claire was going to play, he would beat her at her own game. He clutched his sword tightly, clashing it against Claire's. The impact they created was so strong that it emitted a blast, deafening the spectators. They instinctively covered their ears, asking what the sound was. Claire wobbled from the aftermath of the blast, unable to believe that Luxe took her new move head-on. Luxe only winked at her, telling her that if she was going to surpass him, he would see to it with his evil eye to catch up to her. Claire's eyes widened with excitement, saying he was the best. She couldn't wait to keep going until one of them would fall. Luxe was eager to fulfill her wishes, and he continued the match. They didn't dare waste a second, and they kept swinging at each other to their heart's content. The spectators wondered what was up with the match, as it was too amazing. They had never seen anything like it before. Meanwhile, Morga had noticed the shift in the spectators' energy. Eliza, on the other hand, was occupied cheering for Luxe. Dennis remarked that Luxe and Claire were evolving as they fought, and it was magnificent offense and defense. Joris agreed, but Luxe's decisive moment was yet to approach. Just then, Luxe wondered how strong they could get, while Morga focused on how fun this match was. He also asked himself if his evil eye would get stronger. Claire had no other thought in mind, only that she was having fun. She could only wish for them to stay like that for eternity. However, the match had to end somehow, and Claire was declared the winner. Luxe was immobile, lying on the floor. He couldn't move his body because he went beyond his physical limit. Just then, Claire lay beside him, giddily talking about how fun the match was. It was quite the match, and Luxe agreed. Just then, Claire sat up and asked Luxe to fight her again. Luxe was taken aback, so Claire clarified that she just wanted regular sparring. Luxe only laughed awkwardly, thinking they had just ended one. "Ma'am, he just met God and came back. Let him breathe." However, he smiled and said he would be honored, that is, if she would be okay with him. Claire asked if he was sure, then she dove in for a tight hug. She expressed how glad she was, not knowing that Luxe was uncomfortable. He didn't remember her having such a childish side, but it seemed like he met her standards. As Claire kept hugging Luxe, the referee walked toward them, notifying them that they would soon start the awarding ceremony. Luxe made his way out of the arena, but the referee stopped him and asked where he was going. Luxe said that if someone as unpopular as him were there, it would ruin the awards ceremony. However, Claire doubted his thoughts, gazing over the crowd as she spoke. Confused, Luxe looked back, only to see the entire arena cheering for them both. The spectators who once jeered now looked at him in a new light, praising him for the match. They apologized for booing him and they praised him and Claire. At that moment, Luxe wasn't glad about the crowd's sudden change of heart. If anything, they were selfish. However, he was too focused on his own match to even hear their boos. He was glad though, all of them had a sudden change of heart and they didn't deny what they did. Amid the roaring crowd, Luxe's loyal supporters cheered his victory. Dennis stood tall with pride, grateful to call him his brother. Joris offered a casual nod of approval, acknowledging the good fight. Morga thought Luxe was nothing short of amazing. Eliza, however, felt nothing but worry. Then, amidst the fading excitement, Luxe and Claire approached each other and shook hands. He expressed his gratitude for saving him, and she replied with a warm smile, saying it was her pleasure and that she genuinely enjoyed the match. Luxe's eyes beamed with excitement as he went through the festival's bustling streets. If he were honest, he was still tired from the tournament the previous day. However, the second day of the 10th anniversary was all about the festival. He couldn't just take a break and skip it. As he observed the details around him, he noticed that everything was very nice. It was a Japanese-style festival that was unique to BlazFan. Just then, his eyes started to water as he thought about the unique JRPG flavor. He never thought he would experience it. However, he silently noted that he wasn't too keen on festivals. Behind him, Dennis loudly remarked that his dish was irresistible. He enjoyed a steaming plate of takoyaki, visibly moved by its delicious flavor. Luxe watched him fondly, happy to see that he was enjoying it. As Dennis savored his food, he reminded Luxe not to stray too far because he was his guardian for the day. Luxe could only smile awkwardly, knowing he didn't agree to it. Not long after, he wandered slightly ahead and he caught the sound of a familiar voice calling out to him. It was Eliza, asking if it was okay for him to be there after the tournament. Luxe proudly reassured her that he didn't need rest when all this was happening. Eliza was relieved, but she suddenly got startled when Luxe noticed something. He had just noticed that Eliza was in a yukata, which was rare. She got self-conscious, wondering what was up. Luxe didn't answer and instead asked if she was alone. Eliza asked if that was bad, and she started to worry that she had hoped too much from just meeting. Suddenly, Dennis appeared, calling out to Luxe with a teasing expression. He then pushed Luxe and Eliza closer, saying that a gentleman shouldn't just leave a lady all by herself. He clasped their hands together, insisting that it would be bad if they got separated. Both were shocked, unable to protest. He grabbed their hands like he was closing a Sims interaction. Dennis gave his brother a proud salute, saying that the rest was up to him. Luxe shivered at the thought, wondering what he was even suggesting. Suddenly, some sausages caught Dennis's attention and he wandered off without notice. Meanwhile, Luxe called out to him, frantically reminding him about the whole guardian thing. Left with no choice, he apologized to Eliza for his brother's weird behavior. Eliza, still holding onto Luxe's hand, nervously said that Dennis wasn't entirely wrong. She anxiously twirled her hair around her finger, blushing as she told Luxe that she didn't mind if they kept going. Luxe was dazed, realizing she just gave the okay sign. And so, for the rest of the night, the two toured around the area. Luxe couldn't believe it was really happening. Later on, a girl sitting on a tree branch suddenly called out to Luxe. It was Claire, and she was glad to see him. Luxe suddenly got giddy, making Claire confused. He couldn't believe he was able to see Claire in her casual clothing. Claire worriedly asked if he was okay, while Eliza reassured her not to worry about him. Suddenly, Claire introduced herself to Eliza, and Eliza recognized her from the tournament. Meanwhile, Luxe realized it was their first time meeting. Just then, Eliza leaned closer to Luxe, looking a bit tired. Claire noticed it, and so she excused herself. Luxe asked why it was so soon, so Claire chuckled and explained that she might get in the way. Why's Eliza leaning like her HP bar just turned yellow? Sensing their confusion, Claire asked if they were in that kind of relationship. Eliza turned red, asking what she meant. She got defensive, frantically explaining that Luxe was just her childhood friend. Claire understood, and she said she was glad. However, at the back of her mind, she wondered why she even said that. Luxe turned his back on the two girls, thinking to himself that the atmosphere was different. He could feel them looking at him and he couldn't deny the pressure. In an attempt to assert dominance, Eliza took Luxe's pinky, urging him to follow her. Claire asked why they were holding hands, but no one answered. Meanwhile, Luxe expressed his frustration, so Eliza explained that it might be bad if they got separated. Claire quickly took the opportunity to hold Luxe's hand, but Eliza swatted it off. Not the hand-holding battle royale. Claire asked why, and Eliza simply said there was no reason. Luxe, on the other hand, was feeling all the butterflies in his stomach. Just then, Claire frowned, saying they weren't being fair. She demanded to hold hands with Luxe, shocking both Eliza and Luxe. Eliza anxiously argued that they weren't playing around, and Luxe agreed with a grin. Claire asked Luxe if he didn't like her hand, and he quickly denied saying such a thing. She then turned to Eliza, asking why she was so flustered. Eliza nervously denied the allegation while Luxe tried to prevent them from fighting. Luxe asked himself what was happening and what he should do. The two girls called out to him simultaneously, seemingly asking him to pick a side. Overwhelmed, he screamed, finally agreeing to hold their hands at the same time. Claire laughed with joy, saying the activity was fun in its own way. Eliza pouted, admitting she was willing to compromise. Luxe, on the other hand, said it felt wrong. As they walked the busy streets, Luxe tried to brainstorm a solution for his crisis. Just then, Claire broke off from the group, running towards something interesting. She was excited to see some swords that were up for sale. She picked a sword, urging Luxe to continue where they left off the other day. However, Eliza doubted she would be able to do that with such a huge crowd. Luxe chuckled, recalling that Claire was a cool and mature character in the game. However, at that moment she was as innocent as an elementary school boy. He couldn't deny she had her own charm. As Luxe was deep in thought, Eliza tried to take the sword from Claire. She screamed at Luxe to help her while Claire whined like a little child. Claire and Eliza both found themselves subtly competing for Luxe's attention. They first stopped by a game stall together, clearly having fun while Luxe stood nearby, intrigued but unaware of their quiet rivalry. Bro out here soft-launching a harem and doesn't even know it. Later, the group gathered again, this time with icy treats in hand. Luxe got a brain freeze, making the girls burst into laughter. As the night progressed, Eliza mentioned that it was about time for the fireworks show. Now that Luxe thought of it, he realized he had never really seen fireworks. Claire told them that she knew a great spot to watch the fireworks, and this intrigued Luxe. Just then, a commotion caught the group's attention. The crowd was pleading with a mysterious figure to resurrect someone and bring them salvation. They desperately claimed that they could no longer go on. As everyone went hysterical, Luxe and the girls wondered what was going on. Suddenly, the mysterious figure addressed everyone, reassuring them that the Demon King would surely be resurrected. Under him, everyone would be equal and would be freed from all suffering. Eliza asked Luxe what was up with those people, and Luxe explained it was the Demon King's resurrection cult. The Demon King Resurrection Cult, as the name suggested, was a cult that aimed to resurrect the Demon King. In the game, they secretly worked to resurrect the Demon King. Without a doubt, they were the MC's enemies. If the Demon King were resurrected, they would immediately work towards obtaining the evil eyes. If that were to happen, Luxe's fate would be inevitable. Just then, a woman kneeled in front of the cult leader, telling him she faced hardships. The cult leader met her gaze, reassuring her that she would be given salvation once the Demon King got resurrected. Seeing this made Luxe grit his teeth in anger. Meanwhile, Eliza expressed her disappointment, wondering why such people had to ruin a nice festival. Claire, on the other hand, suggested reporting the incident to the knights. However, Luxe remained where he stood, breaking himself free from the girls. Currently, his greatest enemy was in front of him. His hand curled into a fist, wondering what he should do. He was confident he could hold his own, but they were only low-level believers. He didn't want to stand out just to subdue them. Suddenly, Eliza called out to him, snapping him back into reality. She asked if he was okay while Claire wondered why he was so worked up. Eliza tried to calm him down, telling him it was a common event, even in the royal capital. Luxe was even more tense, realizing that the girls didn't know the existence of the Demon King Resurrection Cult from the game. He quickly apologized, explaining that he was just deep in thought. Not long after, the group headed to a tower. As they went up the stairs, Claire explained that this was the great spot she mentioned earlier. The girls were filled with excitement, while Luxe was still sulking about the incident with the cult. In the end, even with his knowledge of the game, there were still things that he didn't know. While this world was similar to the game he knew, it was still reality. His perception was naive, and if he carried on like that, he would end up repeating what happened in the game. He had to reconsider his actions, get stronger, and gather more information. Luxe started to feel the weight of everything he had to do, and he started drowning in his own thoughts. Before he realized, the fireworks started exploding in the sky, snapping him back to the present. The three of them were in awe of the beautiful display before them. Luxe's eyes widened and he felt his heart beating faster. Meanwhile, Claire said it was the most fun 10th anniversary she ever had. Eliza agreed, noting that she would never forget it. Just then, Claire turned to Luxe, saying it was all thanks to him. Eliza hesitated to say it, but she admitted she thanked him a bit. However, Luxe didn't respond. The image of the real Luxe flashed in his mind, reminding him that he was the mid-boss. Along with Eliza and Claire, they were supposed to kill each other. However, in this reality, they were all looking up to the same sky. This made Luxe optimistic, realizing that their fates were certainly changing. He calmed himself down, reassuring himself that he didn't need to rush. Just then, he thanked the girls for watching the fireworks with him. The three of them smiled at each other, and the rest of the night carried on peacefully. After the event, they returned to the festival, amazed by what they had just witnessed. Just then, Eliza attempted to hold Luxe's hand, but Claire was too quick to notice. Claire clocked that hand move faster than FBI agents. She called her out for being unfair, which immediately made Eliza anxious. Fed up, Luxe screamed at them to stop it. Suddenly, a man working for the information center announced that Dennis was looking for Luxe. Luxe got alarmed, even more so when he was told to head to the emergency tent. Claire was shook, while Eliza gasped. Luxe, on the other hand, quickly jumped into action. He soon found out that his brother only had a raging stomachache, having devoured everything on site at the festival. He wailed in pain, but the nurse reassured Luxe that his brother only ate too much. However, Luxe still cried for his brother, empathizing with his suffering. It was time for the final day of the 10th anniversary in the royal capital. All that remained was the dance party, an event that served as the prologue to Blasfan. It would be the day when heroes and heroines first met and children went out for little adventures. Luxe had played this many times, yet it was still the best beginning he had experienced. And now he was finally about to witness that moment himself. He would be a mob that would watch over the heroines. However, he decided being a mob wasn't enough. He needed to be one with the wind. Suddenly, he snapped out of his fantasy when someone called his name. Melon informed him that he was now ready. Luxe was starstruck seeing how handsome he looked in the mirror. Melon proudly said he didn't look bad, and Morga was so sure he would attract the eyes of the girls. However, Luxe had already decided he was but a mob, and he was one with the wind. The girls freaked out, saying they couldn't have that. Melon reminded him of the importance of the dance party, while Morga told him he would find his future spouse there. Seeing their reactions, Luxe anxiously said he was kidding. Luxe saw his glow up and said, "Nah, I'm background noise." With everything settled, the maids wished him luck. Luxe didn't really intend to dance with anyone at this dance party. There were two reasons. Originally, the real Luxe didn't attend the dance party because he was sent to the hospital by Claire after the swordsmanship tournament. He didn't know how his actions would affect the development of the original story. Other than that, the main heroine, Lyra Scarlet, had a deep connection with him. He definitely didn't want to get in the way of the hero and Lyra's meeting. With that said, Luxe was sure that if he stayed back, he would be fine. He was but a mob, one with the wind. Not long after, he reached the castle, but he complained about all the walking that he had to do. Just then, as he walked by two girls, they started talking about him. They were horrified about the evil-eyed, who they believed was the worst. More people started exchanging whispers, saying their precious party was ruined by such an ominous figure. They hoped he would just get lost. This annoyed Luxe as he was trying not to stand out. He consciously raised his hand to his eye, thinking of leaving the party. However, he knew he would be letting Melon and Morga down. He sighed, knowing it couldn't be helped. Suddenly, a girl in the crowd addressed everyone, claiming there was no need to fear the evil eye. Luxe's eyes widened in shock, recognizing the voice he just heard. Meanwhile, another girl kept the princess from Luxe, warning her that the evil-eyed was dangerous. The princess was defiant, telling everyone that it was all a misunderstanding. She then stood beside Luxe, claiming that the evil eye was not scary. She even announced that she would prove it. Luxe was stunned. He was in front of Lyra Scarlet herself. The spectators called out to Lyra in concern, yet she didn't listen. She placed her hand on Luxe's arms, telling him to show her his evil eye. Luxe tried to argue, but Lyra made it clear that it was an order. Left with no choice, he activated his evil eye. Lyra looked straight into his eye, but nothing happened. She smiled, relieved to know that she was okay, just as she thought. Not her raw-dogging eye contact with Satan's contact lens. There was no need to fear both the evil eye and Luxe Zeldia. Luxe was too stunned to speak, and he could only mutter her name. He tried to say something, but he quickly took it back. Lyra reassured him it was okay and that no one would fear him anymore. Luxe agreed with her, seeing that the halls were empty after everyone left in fear. As the night progressed, Lyra disappointingly said it was all for naught. Luxe tried to make her feel better, saying she had been a great help. Lyra thought she was able to change everyone's prejudice against his evil eye. Luxe smiled, recalling that Lyra's seriousness is what made her Blasfan's main heroine. She smiled, realizing she was still inexperienced. Just then, Luxe was met with another dilemma. He wondered what he should do, as he didn't expect to meet Lyra that day. Suddenly, Lyra called out to him, shocking him back to reality. Lyra asked to talk with him, so they headed to a fountain in the garden. There, Lyra said she always wanted to apologize. When they first met, she was only a child. She was scared when she saw his eyes, and she ended up crying. She was sure she heard him too. Luxe recognized this all too well. This was the connection he was talking about. The real Luxe kept hanging about this matter, and the two didn't reconcile until the end. Luxe fell into the darkness, and Lyra thought she was the reason for his decision. Because of that, Lyra continued to be driven by remorse. However, this Luxe was the one in control now, so he should be able to steer the situation into a different future. Lyra wanted to apologize further, but Luxe stood up and said she didn't need to do it. Lyra stood as well, arguing that she couldn't just do that. She continued, but Luxe interrupted, asking why she had suddenly taken such an action earlier. She was hesitant to answer, but she ultimately reasoned that she was a princess and her action was a given. Luxe asked why it was so sudden, which only confused Lyra. If Luxe had to say, she was looking back on that day, leaning more into what the evil eye was. She remembered his situation as the child with evil eyes. Lyra was heartbroken, and that was why she didn't hesitate at that moment. Luxe asked if he was wrong, but Lyra was stunned into silence. He went on, saying that Lyra's actions saved him more than words ever could. So he had one wish, which was for her to look into the future and not the past. Not to apologize, but to strive for friendship. He held out his hand to her, thinking it could ease her burdens even just a little bit. Just then, Lyra admitted that as a princess she was ashamed of her mistake. She then smiled brightly, expressing her gratitude to Luxe. With that, she happily shook his hand. Not long after, she expressed how glad she was to get the guilt off her chest. Luxe felt the same way, but then he suggested enjoying the dance party. Lyra seemed hesitant to ask him for something, but she ultimately revealed her request, for them to dance together. Luxe was shocked, and he let out a deafening sound of disbelief. He started to panic, thinking about how things would be different. If he danced with Lyra, then the prologue with the hero would be ruined. He was just a mere mob, and he was fine with just watching over them from afar. Luxe asked Lyra why she asked him, and she happily replied that it was because she liked him. Luxe was shocked, and it seemed like he was teleported into outer space for a moment. He wanted to protest, but Lyra told him that she had heard about his devotion to both swordsmanship and magic. She then came closer, adding that his appearance was also a factor. Luxe didn't just lie down and accept his fate. He chose to stand up and fight back. That part about him was what Lyra respected with all her heart. Somehow that interaction scared Luxe. He was relieved to know that that was what Lyra was referring to. Still, he was worried. Suddenly, he bowed before Lyra, apologizing to her. There were circumstances that made it impossible for them to dance together. Bro really hit her with, "Sorry babe, canon says no." Lyra understood, but Luxe felt guilty and kept on apologizing. Concerned by his reaction, Lyra told him not to take it too seriously. Suddenly, Lyra told Luxe to stop using honorifics. Luxe was shocked, wondering how she came up with that. Lyra then explained that she wanted to get to know him better. Meanwhile, Luxe was starting to get anxious, as she was getting closer to him by the minute. He then asked Lyra if this was caused by her respect for him, and she said yes. She asked if something was wrong, but Luxe said no. Then he put himself under her care. Luxe still referred to her with honorifics, so Lyra quickly called him out for it. Luxe hesitatingly called her informally, which amused Lyra. She gave him a pat on the head, praising him for doing it. All that was ended well, and Luxe was able to resolve his relationship with Lyra. However, he was kind of curious as to how high Lyra's likability was. As they walked around the garden, Luxe's eyes suddenly widened when he spotted the holy sword, Grand Saber. He carefully observed it, amazed that it was the real deal. Lyra explained that it was the legendary sword that the hero once used to defeat the Demon King. She then asked if Luxe knew about the legend surrounding it. As the story goes, he who pulled this sword shall be united with the royal family. Luxe understood, but he noticed that it was a bit different from the story he knew. It was not, "He who pulled this sword shall be united with the royal family," but rather, "He who has received the love of royalty will be able to pull this sword." So it could only be used in Lyra's route, which was one of the strongest swords in the series. Lyra urged Luxe to try and pull it, which surprised him. She reminded him that the sword was there precisely so people could try it. Luxe was about to reject her request, but he was suddenly reminded of her confession earlier. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, he held the sword to pull it, thinking there was no way he could actually do it. Lyra kept quiet beside Luxe while he nervously prepared himself. He pulled as hard as he could, but his little body only quivered. The only thing Luxe pulled that day was a hamstring. Defeated, he told Lyra that he couldn't do it, and she laughed, reassuring him that it was just a legend after all. Luxe failed as he had expected, but it was for the greater good because he would just invite more trouble if he succeeded. As the day ended, Lyra thanked Luxe for his time. She added that it was unfortunate that they couldn't dance together, and Luxe said sorry about it. Lyra thought that if he danced with her, the princess, it would help dispel the bad image of the child with evil eye. Luxe was surprised, realizing she had thought that far. Still, Lyra told him she was really glad that they were able to make up. She was able to fulfill her duties as a princess, which somehow confused Luxe. Lyra then explained to him that the royal family and the three great families should all be on friendly terms. Luxe agreed she was right, but he finally understood everything that happened that day. Lyra asked if she had said something strange, but Luxe said no. Lyra believed him. Then she went on to say that it was what a princess should do. Luxe tried to shake away his previous thoughts, reassuring himself that it was fine and Lyra was just being herself. With that, Luxe excused himself, telling Lyra to have fun at the party. She tried to stop him, but Luxe kept on running away, thinking that Lyra was serious, hardworking, a little selfish, and naive. Most of all, she fell in love with the MC, Leon. When Luxe was finally alone, he realized that he really couldn't wait to see Lyra and Leon meeting each other. As the rest of the night went on, Lyra decided to return to the party and tend to her guests. King Grem apologized to Lyra for making her greet her guests, but she reassured her father that it was okay because it was also a princess's duty. Just then, someone from the crowd called out to Grem, and he recognized it as the dragon-slaying hero. Lyra was starstruck, as the hero had a young son who was strikingly handsome. They stared at each other, unaware that they would be destined lovers in the future. Luxe observed them from upstairs, thinking it was time for Lyra and Leon to meet. He definitely wanted to see it for himself, but he also didn't want to be a bother. Because of that, he decided to just feel the air from far away. Just then, Luxe was reminded of something when he thought about the air. He took a little bottle and filled it with air from the room, sealing it shut before it could escape. His eyes sparkled. Excited that he now had a souvenir from this Blasfan atmosphere, he made sure to treasure it with all his life. He really said limited edition airdrop and bottled it. As Luxe hummed with joy, he suddenly overheard a conversation between three girls. Two of the girls were bullying the other. They couldn't believe that a low-ranking noble like her was being inappropriate. Luxe was annoyed because he was just basking in joy, but they ruined his moment. Just then, the low-ranking noble was told that her dress was too revealing and that she shouldn't get too carried away. Luxe was intrigued, wondering what this picturesque, nasty noble thing was. Having enough of their drama, Luxe decided to intervene. He called out the girls, telling them that they were in the middle of a fun party. However, before he could even finish his sentence, one of the girls snapped back at him. As soon as the girl realized that it was Luxe, she and her friend immediately ran away. They cried as they desperately tried to escape, though Luxe tried to stop them from leaving. Just then, the low-ranking noble thanked Luxe and he acknowledged her. Luxe suddenly fell silent as he was really worried about Lyra and Leon. He hoped things were going well. Meanwhile, King Grem thanked the hero and his brother for traveling the world and helping people by dealing with monsters. Suddenly, the hero told the king that they had just faced a salamander-infested village in Chive, which amused him very much. He asked to hear more, and so the hero humored the king. As the two spoke, Lyra struck up a conversation with Leon, asking if he was accompanying his father. She asked how it was or if it was hard for him. However, Leon didn't answer and was rather occupied with his thoughts. Lyra called out to him in concern, but he only said that the party was amazing. He had never been to one before. True enough, everything in that hall was lavish and sparkling. Lyra was glad to hear that he liked it, but he didn't respond to that. Suddenly, Leon bluntly said that he felt sick. Lyra didn't hear and asked if he said something. Just then, Leon said he heard a rumor that the Scarlet family had a legendary magic that was passed down for generations. Lyra asked if he was referring to the Holy Flame, and Leon confirmed she was right. It was a legendary magic passed down through the family, an unstoppable fire that burned demons to ashes. Leon made it clear that he only came because of that. Lyra was confused, especially when he said only. Bro skipped small talk and went straight to bitch mode. Just then, Leon politely asked to see it, and he promised not to mind even if it was just for a moment. However, Lyra said she was unable to, which somewhat caught Leon off guard. She felt embarrassed, but she admitted that she was still unable to use the Holy Flame. Leon whined, saying that it was his only source of enjoyment. Lyra felt more embarrassed than ever, and she apologized for not living up to his expectations. Just then, Leon recalled something that he had heard, that the Holy Flame was a magic that could prove that someone was a member of the royal family. The royal family existed to protect the people, and a strong desire to protect the people was what fueled the Holy Flame, or so he heard. Lyra agreed with him, as it was how she had interpreted it too. Suddenly, Leon came up with the conclusion that Lyra didn't have enough desire to protect the people, which she frantically denied. Leon pressed on, asking what could be the reason. Lyra confessed that it was her incompetence, then she fell silent after admitting that. Suddenly, Leon shrugged off her confession and said, "Whatever." He shifted the topic and said that he couldn't understand such a luxurious party. This ain't a love interest, it's a walking red flag factory. Lyra somehow agreed with him, noting that both the party and her life were there because of the support of the people, yet she had no power to protect them. Lux ended up chattering with the low-ranking noble, though he didn't mean to. He was now wondering what Lyra and Leon were doing at that moment. He blushed as he thought of the probability of them hitting it off, and they probably were sneaking out of the party to have some time for themselves, not him third-wheeling his own imagination. Just then the music started, which meant that it was time for the dance. The girl suddenly remarked that the music was lovely, which reminded Lux that most girls yearned for this moment in their lives. Lux took a good look at the girl and he realized that he had met her by chance and didn't even recall her existence in-game. In other words, she was a mob. However, she didn't seem scared of his evil eye, and she even talked to him normally. Since this was the long-awaited 10th anniversary, he might as well do something nice. With that, Lux approached the girl and kneeled before her. He asked if he could have the privilege of sharing a dance with her. The girl was shocked, and she asked if he was sure about doing it with someone of her stature. Meanwhile, Lyra and Leon parted ways, each of them seemingly unimpressed. As she passed by King Grem, he asked where she was going. She apologized to her father, and she simply reasoned that she was going for some fresh air. Leon, on the other hand, invited his father to go home, and the man agreed. Elsewhere, Lux danced with the girl, and they were lost in their own world. Later on, Lyra finally exited the halls, and she went to see her grandfather. She kneeled beside him and asked how she could use the holy flame. The old man told her that she needed love, which surprised her. Lyra asked if this was the desire to protect the people, but this only made the old man laugh. He believed that she would understand when she grew up. Grandpa basically said, "Skill issue, get a boyfriend." However, Lyra argued that she still didn't get it no matter how much time passed. Just then, she saw a cloaked figure run past her. She wondered what it was, and she guessed it was a thief. She then gazed over the distance and realized that the thief was heading to the treasury. Suddenly, she remembered Leon's words wherein he said that the royal family existed to protect the people. He even asked her if she didn't have enough desire to do it. This somehow fueled Lyra's courage to prove him wrong, and so she decided to stop the thief. She ran towards the treasury, convinced that she could take on a lone thief. Sis really thought she was Batman. Meanwhile, Lux thanked the girl for the dance, especially since she tolerated his rather unpolished steps. However, the girl told him not to worry as she wasn't very good at it herself. Suddenly, Lux was surprised when he saw Leon leaving the venue with his father. After confirming that he was right, he was left wondering why he was leaving. Just then, a guard approached Lux and the girl, asking them if they had seen Princess Lyra anywhere. Lux asked if something had happened, but the guard said no and reassured them that it was all right if they hadn't seen her. Lux couldn't help but view the situation as strange, and he wondered why Lyra and Leon weren't together. He felt uneasy, but he couldn't tell why. Just then, the girl asked if he was wondering if the princess was still within the castle. She then took off her necklace, saying that they could see the answer for themselves. Lux was confused, and so the girl showed him what she meant. She lightly swung the necklace, and out came a holographic image of the entire castle. Lux was shocked to see a 3D vision of the castle, and he asked if it was truly a map. The girl explained that it was detection magic, which was the only one she could use. Lux was amazed as he had never seen that before. It was truly quite the magic. Just then, the girl pointed to a specific part of the castle, believing that she was in that small room. Lux was slightly freaked out that this was all true, and he couldn't believe that this girl was a mob. Just then, they saw a hooded figure lurking near Lyra, and Lux asked who it was. The girl explained that there was someone else beside the princess, and his name was Masmatella Marcanus. Lux shivered as he heard the name, but the girl only asked if they were acquaintances. He instinctively covered his evil eye, unable to believe why all of this was happening. The girl called out to him, but his thoughts consumed him. Masmatella Marcanus was the leader of the Demon King Resurrection cult. He was the one who stole the evil eye from the character Lux, and he was the one who resurrected the Demon King. He was also the big boss at the end of the game, and he was second to the Demon King in strength. Lyra, at this point in her life, couldn't possibly defeat him. Lux suddenly cursed Masmatella, and he began to freak out. However, he quickly told himself to leave the thinking for later. If he didn't hurry, Lyra would truly be in danger. Resolute, Lux sprinted off to find her, but before leaving, he urged the girl to alert the guards. She promised she would, and just as they were about to part, Lux asked for her name. Azuria Fleuris, she replied. Lux thanked her, admitting he wouldn't know what to do without her, and entrusted her with calling for backup. Azuria reassured him that he could rely on her. And with that, the mob characters set out to save the hero from the final boss. After Lux reincarnated, he became stronger. He could handle swords and magic. Despite that, Masmatella was in a completely different dimension. Suddenly, he felt his hand shaking, and he convinced himself that he didn't have to win. He just needed to buy enough time until help could come. For now, all he could do was trust Azuria. He then dashed towards the treasury, hoping that Lyra could wait for him. Meanwhile, Azuria informed a guard that there was a thief in the treasury. The guard thought it was impossible as the security in the castle was impenetrable. Azuria didn't yield and she told the guard that the princess was there. The guard asked if she had seen her going in there and she explained that she had used a detection magic for it. Since Azuria didn't see it with her own eyes, the guard turned away, telling her to inform them once she saw the princess. Guard really said pics or it didn't happen. Azuria begged the guard to listen, but it was useless. She wondered what she could do because they wouldn't listen to her. Suddenly, Eliza and Claire approached Azuria, asking her if she could spare a moment of her time. They had seen her dancing with Luxe before, though they still wondered if their eyes deceived them. Azuria was shocked and confused, and she wondered what was with these questions. Eliza and Claire loomed over Azuria, telling her that they were just curious. Just then, she asked if they were Luxe's acquaintances, but they were unsure. Eliza said that she and Luxe were just friends, and so were their families. Meanwhile, Claire added that they were connected through their deep love for swords. This made Azuria conclude that they were in fact acquaintances. This upset Eliza and Claire as they believed that they were more than that. Azuria freaked out, but she got it now. Just then, she asked them to listen to her. In the treasury, Masmatella took his time to look around the vast treasures before him. Meanwhile, Lyra followed his tracks, and she could now confirm that Masmatella was truly headed to the treasury. Then, to her shock, she saw one of the guards lying unconscious on the floor. She took a good look at the guard, knowing that he and the others were very well trained. She needed to be careful, as the thief seemed to be highly skilled. Lyra kept on with her mission, keeping in mind that she had to stay hidden. Suddenly, Masmatella spoke, seemingly amused that the princess had found him. Lyra's eyes widened in shock, wondering if the thief had noticed that she was there. Suddenly, she stepped out of hiding, telling the thief to stop right there. However, Masmatella only mocked her, and he joked about being worried now that he had been found out. Just then, he decided that they had to do an introduction. Lyra was stunned, but Masmatella went on to introduce himself. He was Masmatella Marcanus, also known as the Demon Tribe. He was 140 years old and was a guru of a religious organization. He also shared that he was divorced and was looking for a new wife. However, Lyra bluntly said that she didn't need to know that. Masmatella suddenly took off his hood and he shared that his type was a woman who wouldn't go against his orders. In other words, a slave. Imagine announcing your divorce arc to your victim. This horrified Lyra, but she still stood strong, calling Masmatella a deranged demon. Just then, Masmatella said that he wouldn't lie to her. She was even free to test him. Furious, Lyra vowed that she would make him regret those words. With that, she used her double attribute magic, releasing a massive flamestorm. She commanded Masmatella to atone for his sins of walking into the royal treasury without respect. And with that, he would pay with his life. However, when the dust settled, Lyra found that Masmatella was unscathed. The old man remarked that she was amazing, though he had already expected this from someone of pedigree. Seeing that he was unharmed, Lyra decided to use her full power. She used a quadruple attribute, releasing a fusion disaster attack. But as expected of Masmatella, he only stood there unfazed. He thought Lyra was impressive considering her age. Lyra, on the other hand, was stunned. As she tried to catch her breath, she started to realize that their difference in power was just too massive. Suddenly, Masmatella urged Lyra to try again as he refused to believe that was everything. This reminded Lyra that she had one last resort, the Holy Flame. It was a magic that was effective against demons, and it could possibly harm Masmatella. Lyra was sure that this man was a menace, and he would probably bring disaster to her country in the near future. She knew that she had to use the Holy Flame to protect her country. She curled her palm into a fist, begging for it to work. Just then, she called upon the Holy Flame, shocking Masmatella. She aimed her hands towards him, and he braced himself for the impact. However, Lyra was horrified to find that she was unsuccessful. Masmatella admitted that he was surprised, though he warned the princess not to play pranks on the elderly. Holy Flame. More like Holy Flop. Disheartened by her failed attempt, Lyra fell to her knees. Meanwhile, Masmatella acknowledged that it was still quite the entertainment. Suddenly, Lyra mustered the courage to release another double attribute. However, Masmatella reminded her that she had already pulled that card. He suddenly teleported behind Lyra, breaking to her that he didn't really care about her. He then put his sharp claws near her neck, telling her to die for him since he was already there. Lyra cursed under her breath, and she closed her eyes as she accepted her impending doom. Then, as Masmatella bid her farewell, Luxe appeared out of nowhere and shot him with the Judgment Thunder attack. Luxe worriedly asked if Lyra was okay, but she was only able to mutter his name. Meanwhile, Masmatella grunted in pain, unable to move from the attack. Just then, Lyra thanked Luxe for helping her. Luxe suddenly handed her a chocolate bar, which confused her. However, Luxe only told her to eat it. Bro said, "You might be dying, but have a Snickers." He made that food copy using his magical power, and it should restore Lyra's magical powers. After that, Luxe urged Lyra to run, but she refused. He insisted on holding back Masmatella, but Lyra made it clear that she wasn't running and would fight back. To her, the word run didn't exist in Lyra Scarlet's dictionary. As Lyra hurriedly finished the chocolate, Luxe realized that if she were that insistent, then she probably wouldn't back down. Luxe then thanked Lyra, but he reminded her not to push herself too much. With that, they prepared themselves for Masmetella's rebuttal. Just then, Masmetella finally broke out of Luxe's attack. He let out a mocking tone, but he commended Luxe's impressive magic. Luxe had hit Masmetella with the highest level of lightning magic, yet he was still well. Suddenly, Masmetella welcomed Luxe, calling him by his full name. Lyra was confused by Masmetella's choice of words, while Luxe realized that he might be the old man's true target after all. Masmetella told Luxe that he was quick to the chase and he loved smart kids. With that, he asked Luxe if he was going to join him in the Demon Resurrection cult. He also added that they were all equal under the Demon King. However, Luxe cut him off and he bluntly rejected the offer. In the original work, Luxe fell for Masmetella's sweet words and he was betrayed. This time, Luxe wouldn't fall for it because he had made up his mind. He wouldn't die until the main characters live a happy life. Hearing Luxe's response, Masmetella said it was truly unfortunate. Suddenly, he released an attack which he directed at Luxe. Masmetella's demon nail attack dug into the ground and it attempted to pierce Luxe from where he was standing. Girl, that's just a long press-on. Just then, Masmetella said it was unfortunate for Luxe because it was a pain to fight and then steal it. Suddenly, Lyra called to Luxe to warn him. Meanwhile, Luxe was stunned that Masmetella switched his plan to straight up stealing his evil eye. Masmetella suddenly appeared before Luxe, swinging his sharp claws at his face. Luxe narrowly dodged the attack, but Masmetella only laughed at the possibility of him escaping. Just then, Lyra released a double attribute attack, but Luxe tried to stop her. As long as Masmetella had his dark robe, he wouldn't be defeated. His dark robe was a top-of-the-line armor that could significantly reduce magic damage. That was why her magic hadn't dealt that much damage. Luxe volunteered to nullify it, and when the time came, he would need Lyra to unleash all of her magic on Masmetella. With that, Luxe used his imitation magic, which confused Masmetella. The treasure from one of the glass boxes suddenly vanished, and it appeared in Luxe's hand. He borrowed precious materials from the treasury and supplemented any missing materials with his own magical power. Lyra was shocked, as Luxe was wielding the holy sword Grand Saber. The color was different, and it wasn't a perfect imitation, but with that, he should be able to face Masmetella. Imagine flexing with a holy relic, but it's the bootleg skin. He wasted no time attacking Masmetella, but the old man was able to avoid the attack. Masmetella commended Luxe for his moves, and he was excited that he had full energy. However, he suddenly used his mere claws to counter the holy sword. Masmetella was so powerful that he managed to chip Luxe's sword. He let out a maniacal laugh, boasting that a holy sword weaker than his claw was nothing but a joke. Luxe had not been chosen by the sword, and it was a counterfeit that ignored terms of use. However, this wouldn't stop him from trying. Luxe bolted towards Masmetella, swinging his sword with determination. Then, to his shock, Masmetella flicked the sword from his hand. Lyra was in disbelief, while Luxe was stunned in silence. As he helplessly dropped to the floor, Masmetella loomed over him, telling him that his swordsmanship wasn't that great. Just then, Lyra attempted to release a quadruple attribute attack, but Luxe signaled her not to. Meanwhile, Masmetella leveled his gaze at Luxe and he told the young man not to worry. After he would take his evil eye, he would kill both him and Lyra together. With that, Masmetella slowly reached out to steal Luxe's eyes. However, before he could do that, Luxe muttered, "Demon Nail." The Demon Nail attack, similar to Masmetella's, suddenly burst out of the ground, piercing him. He was in disbelief that Luxe copied his skill and used it against him. Not the Uno reverse jutsu. Luxe thought that the only way to defeat Masmetella was to find an opening. However, he was an arrogant character, and he could lure him to lower his guard. Letting go of the Grand Saber was a ploy, and if Masmetella thought that he used up his trump card, he would let his guard down. With Masmetella's dark robe being neutralized, Luxe called out to Lyra, telling her that he was counting on her. With that, Lyra used the quadruple attribute, pairing it with a fusion disaster attack. A massive explosion occurred, raining down on the helpless Masmetella. As the dust settled, his unconscious body lay on the floor before Luxe and Lyra. They were able to do it, but it drained Lyra of her strength. She used most of her magical power, so Luxe urged her to leave while she still could. Unbeknownst to them, while they were talking, Masmetella was slowly regenerating. He suddenly attacked Luxe with his magic, heavily injuring him. Masmetella, who had melted from the attack, furiously asked how they dared to underestimate him. He suddenly grew into a massive creature, calling Luxe and Lyra damned brats. He cursed them to hell along with the evil eye, and he didn't even care for it anymore. All he wanted was to kill them both right at that moment. With the energy he had left, Luxe told Lyra that she could escape on her own. However, even Lyra was too weak to run. Just then, Luxe said that he couldn't anymore, and it seemed like he was about to die. These two built like wet paper towels. Meanwhile, Masmetella swung his massive fist, ready to end Luxe and Lyra. Then, out of nowhere, his hand was cut off, making him writhe in pain. Claire suddenly landed on the floor, jokingly telling Luxe that he was being unfair for keeping such a strong opponent all to himself. Luxe was stunned to see her, but he was even more surprised when he started to feel power surging inside him. To his surprise, Eliza was healing him and Lyra, and she told them to stay still or else she would stop. Azuria quickly came running in, relieved that they made it. Luxe asked Azuria if she brought Eliza and Claire, but she didn't answer the question. Instead, she apologized for having to step back, as she knew that she would be nothing but a hindrance. However, Luxe reassured her that she was nothing but helpful. Suddenly, Azuria said that she would go and call for more reinforcements. She also told everyone to hang on. Before she could leave, Luxe thanked Azuria. Meanwhile, Masmatella was in disbelief as he almost lost his composure. He quickly regenerated his severed hand, and he was unbothered about having to deal with a couple more kids. Just then, Claire smiled, commending Masmatella for his impressive regeneration. She suddenly lunged toward Masmatella's head, wondering if his regeneration had any limits. She tore him up limb after limb, but he only seemed amused. Man got disassembled like IKEA furniture. Masmatella said that Claire's skills were impressive for her age, but he boasted that it wasn't enough to take him down. Claire didn't care, and she went on to obliterate him. Meanwhile, Eliza warned Luxe to stay still, though he badly wanted to cover for Claire. Lyra, on the other hand, was already feeling better. However, Eliza argued that she wasn't, as her mana was still low. Eliza warned the two that she still had to get them back on track first. However, she knew that Claire wouldn't be able to take down Masmatella on her own. With that, Eliza yielded and she finally agreed to get moving. Suddenly, Masmatella caught Claire's foot, mocking her for being too slow. This made Claire curse under her breath as she knew she was in trouble. However, before Masmatella could harm her, Lyra used her double attribute, pairing it with a water storm attack. It landed right on Masmatella's eye, blinding him. Luxe used this opportunity to land more damage, and he used the hyperslash attack to slice off Masmatella's feet. With that, Claire thanked him for saving her. However, Luxe only told Claire to give her thanks to Eliza. Eliza suddenly told him that he wasn't fully recovered yet, so he should stay within her support range. Just then, Masmatella cursed the kids before him, and he warned that even if they grouped together, they wouldn't beat him. Meanwhile, Claire told Luxe that she would cover for him. Eliza told him to leave the support to her while Lyra would cover the rear. This made Luxe smile as he never thought he would see them all there. Claire Wingate, the strongest combatant, Eliza Coral, the future all-rounder supporter, and Lyra Scarlet, the quad-elemental mage. This was truly the dream collab between Blazfan heroines. He's acting like this is a Coachella lineup reveal. With that, they all ran forward, ready to finish off Masmatella. As Claire lunged toward Masmatella's head, he warned her that he wouldn't fall for it a second time. However, Claire only mocked him for it, and she suddenly signaled Eliza. Eliza used a speed boost for Claire, allowing her to move at an immense pace that Masmatella was unable to spot. His eyes widened in fear seeing that Claire was faster. Eliza then used a consecutive activation power boost for Luxe and a magic boost for Lyra. With that, Lyra used her quad attribute, pairing it with Fusion Disaster. Luxe, on the other hand, used his Hyper Slash. Relentless attacks rained on Masmatella, and he grunted amid the pressure. Luxe suddenly hyped up the others, telling them that they could do it and that they must keep it up. Furious, Masmatella screamed that he wouldn't forgive them and that he would kill them right at that moment. Suddenly, Masmatella delivered a crushing punch, the impact so strong that Luxe and the others were sent hurtling straight through the wall. Grandpa wasn't playing. In the chaos, they plummeted from the building's upper floor, but Luxe acted quickly, and he summoned his magic to cushion their fall. Thankfully, everyone made it to the ground floor safely. Luxe asked if they were all okay, and Lyra said they somehow were. Just then, some nobles happened to walk into the scene, and they screamed upon seeing Masmatella. Concerned, Luxe and Lyra told the nobles to go away and run for it. Just then, Masmatella appeared, ready to strike again. Luxe warned the others that Masmatella was fast approaching, and now, he was in his final form. He had turned into a massive monster, and he looked even more horrifying than before. Claire was surprised that he was still growing, and it seemed like he had lost all sense of self. Suddenly, Masmatella attacked, making the ground around them tremble. Everyone was able to avoid it, but they struggled to keep their balance. Claire remarked that it was such a mess, while Eliza said that she had to push herself just to evade. Meanwhile, Lyra was in despair because she was still unable to use Holy Flame. As she was sulking, Masmatella attempted to attack her, but Luxe came rushing to her aid. Then, when Luxe turned back, Masmatella opened his mouth and he prepared to release a ball of fire. Claire called out to Luxe in concern while Eliza called out to the princess. However, Luxe wasn't one to back down, and he quickly used imitation to create a copy of the dark robe. If he could create it on time, he might just block the attack. However, Luxe froze, realizing that he wouldn't make it on time. The dark robe was enough for one person, and it was either Lyra or him. At that moment, Luxe thought he could change his destiny. All the days leading up to that day had all been for that purpose. He was able to change, and everyone's view around him also changed. so he naively thought he could change his destiny as well. Yet, he was mistaken. It seemed that his fated death was inevitable. As the ball of fire drew nearer, Luxe noticed a strange feeling. The death that he was once so afraid of suddenly didn't feel so scary anymore. It's giving Hunger Games volunteer tribute. With that, he placed the robe on Lyra. Lyra could only mutter his name, knowing what he was trying to do. Just then, Luxe told her that if he could die for her in this beloved game, protecting his favorite, then that would be what he wanted. As Luxe said his final words, the ball of flame erupted, and Mazmatella made sure to fire another round. Eliza and Claire could only scream Luxe's name, but they were helpless. Eliza kneeled on the ground, unable to believe what had just happened. Claire then noticed that it was burning more and more, and if they stayed, they would be burned as well. However, Eliza refused to leave and she kept on calling for Luxe. Suddenly, Eliza noticed that something strange was happening to Mazmatella. She took the flames in her hands, and to her shock, it was warm. Just then, Lyra emerged from the fire, proving that she had now unlocked the holy flame. Okay, Avatar Korra. She finally understood the true meaning of protecting someone dear to her. Claire and Eliza were relieved to see that she and Luxe were okay. Suddenly, the grand saber glowed in Luxe's hands. It was awakening, leaving him wondering why. He was also confused to see the holy flame because it was Lyra's endgame magic. More than that, he was confused because he was supposed to be dead. Just then, Lyra called out to Luxe, reminding him that they had to finish off Mazmatella. Even Holy Flame couldn't hold him off much longer. With that, Luxe collected himself. At that moment, he only understood one thing and one thing only. He charged towards Mazmatella with the grand saber in hand and without thinking twice, sliced him in half. As he succeeded, the girls cheered for him. Meanwhile, Luxe was just as happy. If he could protect his favorites, then that would be enough. After all, misfortune didn't suit them. After that, thanks to Azuria's help in calling for reinforcements, the soldiers came. The situation was quickly brought under control, and Mazmatella was apprehended. He was then confined to a dungeon deep beneath the royal palace. As for Luxe, he still couldn't become a mere mob. The day after the fight with Mazmatella, Luxe was brought to the royal hospital. Morga tried treating him, but he twitched at her every attempt. He claimed that it hurt, but Morga told him he was only exaggerating. Luxe asked her to be more gentle, yet Morga argued that it was just a small wound. However, Luxe insisted that he almost died. Just then, Melon entered the room trying to calm Morga down. She then revealed to Luxe that Morga looked fine now, but yesterday she was in tears and completely distraught when she heard that Luxe was being taken to the hospital. She was losing her mind, asking herself what she should do. Morga crying like Luxe got drafted. Morga acted cool in front of Luxe, but she still thought it was normal to be worried. Luxe then muttered her name, but she suddenly hit his shoulder, telling him not to overexert himself. Suddenly, Joris and Dennis entered the room. Dennis wondered how he was doing, while Joris asked if he was okay. Luxe's eyes widened in delight, and he was glad to see them. Just then, Dennis mentioned that Luxe had saved the princess from harm. He let out one of his weird mannerisms, and he claimed he was proud as his brother. Suddenly, Luxe told him that he offered his deepest gratitude to him. Dennis was confused, and so Luxe explained that his lightning magic proved vital. Without it, he wouldn't know what could have happened. Dennis blushed at the thought of it, as he was able to save his brother without being on the same battlefield. He then went on to brag that he had quite the terrifying talent. Luxe was a bit weirded out, but he couldn't say anything since his brother helped him. Man didn't touch grass, but he touched Luxe's heart. Just then, Joris asked Luxe why he challenged Mazmatella to battle. Mazmatella was a demon of the highest order, and it was a reckless fight. One wrong move and Luxe could have died. Luxe couldn't refuse what Joris said, and luck played a big part in their victory. However, he had to protect Lyra, even at the cost of his own life. So, running away wasn't an option. Joris agreed with him, and he was convinced that it was precisely what made him a man of the Zeldia family. He commended Luxe for fighting bravely, which somehow relieved Luxe because he thought he'd be scolded. Just then, Azuria appeared, and she remarked that hearing Luxe say that bluntly made her heart start beating faster for some reason. Luxe excitedly called out to her, and she expressed how glad she was to see that he was fine. Luxe couldn't believe that she went out of her way to visit him, but she begged to differ. She was going to say something, but she caught herself stuttering. Luxe asked her to continue, but she figured she couldn't just say she was glad to meet him again. Azuria trying to flirt, but instead unlocked stage fright. Suddenly, Luxe said he couldn't thank her enough for what she had done this time. Azuria laughed it off, saying that she was just glad that everyone was okay. Just then, Luxe asked if she knew what happened to Mazmatella. She explained that he was being held in the dungeon, and to prove it, she used her detection magic. As she hovered her necklace, Luxe was still amazed to see it. True enough, Mazmatella was in the dungeon, but the holy flame was still burning. Luxe now understood, which somehow puzzled Azuria. He then explained that the holy flame wouldn't stop until the demon was completely burned. However, Mazmatella's regenerative powers were on another level, and Luxe was guessing that his body would be burned to ashes as soon as it regenerated. He must be experiencing living hell. Hearing that made Azuria think that it was a gruesome end for that old man. Still, Luxe didn't feel any sympathy for him. Suddenly, Claire chimed in, sharing that the investigation for the Demon King resurrection cult was in process. Luxe excitedly called out to Claire and she promptly greeted him. Just then, Claire shared information from her father, the Knight's commander. It turned out that Mazmatella was begging for help. He promised to tell them anything about the demon resurrection cult in exchange for mercy. He acted quite well according to Claire, which only infuriated Luxe. He sold out his comrades without a second thought, and even as an enemy, he was utterly hopeless. The Demon King resurrection cult was nearing its end soon. Claire confirmed it, and she joked that it was quite the leap. Just then, she asked Luxe when he was getting discharged. This confused Luxe, so Claire reminded him that they had promised to train their swordsmanship together. Luxe felt a little tense, as he had just been admitted the previous day. Suddenly, Claire said that she wanted to be with him, which shocked both Luxe and Azuria. Then she elaborated that Mazmatella was strong, yet he wasn't the powerful opponent that she sought. Sparring with Luxe was much better. Worse let's hang out phrasing in anime history. Luxe was relieved as he finally understood what she actually meant. Claire once again asked if he couldn't get out sooner because she wanted to train together forever. Just then, Eliza walked in saying that it must be nice to have the best of both two worlds. She asked if she was in the way and she realized that even if she weren't there, Luxe probably wouldn't notice. She was now lost in a sea of doubt and she asked herself what she was doing there. Luxe was now worried, as Eliza's low self-esteem was in full throttle. As he was wondering what he could do, he noticed the basket of fruits that Eliza was holding. He asked if it was what he thought it was, which quickly snapped Eliza into reality. Luxe said he was just starting to get hungry, and he was glad that Eliza really understood him well. Eliza blushed, then she jokingly said that it couldn't be helped. She claimed he would be hopeless without her, then she started peeling some fruit for him. Sis got reduced to Uber Eats and she still blushed. Luxe was relieved as he had just averted the crisis. Just then, Azuria commented that she and Luxe were getting along well. However, Eliza kept her cool, and she argued that it was just normal. Suddenly, Claire brought up that moment when Luxe was in a pinch, which made Eliza scream and cry his name out. Embarrassed, Eliza screamed at Claire to shut up. Meanwhile, Luxe was starting to worry and he told the girls to get along. He just couldn't help but worry when all the girls were together. He was supposed to be a mob who protected his faves and he needed to play it safe. Suddenly, Claire mentioned that with the four of them there, it was a good chance to clarify things about the dance party. Hearing that, Luxe shivered at the thought of it. Azuria reasoned that she just happened to be around there and Luxe said that he was just taking a breather outside. However, the girls wanted the bottom line and they asked who initiated. Having no choice, Luxe raised his hand in despair. Eliza and Claire shot him a death stare and he pleaded for them to get along. Suddenly, Lyra walked into the room calling out to Luxe. He was relieved as she acted as his lifesaver. She wanted to ask him something, but she seemed hesitant. Luxe encouraged her to go on, so she asked if she really inflicted Mazmatella with the holy flame. When Luxe confirmed that she did, Lyra brought up another concern. She felt embarrassed to suddenly say it, but she asked Luxe to marry her. The girls were shocked, while Luxe only kept quiet amid the chaos. In his imagination, each of the girls wanted their own time with him, only for Lyra to shoot them with a question that seemed like a bazooka's fire. Bro said she saved him, but she actually nuked his social life. As everyone else was distraught, Luxe mentioned that it was a lot to take in. Just then, Lyra explained that in order to use Holy Flame, one would need a strong desire to protect someone important, to which she had always thought meant protecting the people. Yet she was proved wrong. When she wished strongly to protect Luxe, she was overwhelmed with power. She then pressed her face close to Luxe, hinting at what she meant. Luxe thought that Lyra was probably correct, but he was guessing it was because of the food copy that she ate. It was Luxe's magical power in solid form. He couldn't pull out the Grand Saber when he tried it, which Lyra agreed with. Food copies didn't have that kind of effect, but the Grand Saber awakened itself. Just then, Lyra apologized for jumping to conclusions, but Luxe told her not to sweat it. However, she couldn't help but wonder what she was feeling. It made her body heat up, especially when she thought of him. Lyra blushed as she confessed this, while everyone else freaked out. Nothing's too TMI with this one. A few days later, Luxe was finally able to return to the Zeldia territory. Just then, Morga told him to bring over his luggage to the carriage. When he helped load up his things, a note suddenly fell, so he bent down to pick it up. To his surprise, it was the list that he found the day he was reincarnated. It was the wish list written by the original Luxe. One of them was to be happy, which made Luxe ponder. Suddenly, the girls called out to him because they were supposed to see him off. Just then, Eliza told him to see her sometimes or contact her. Claire was looking forward to their next match. and she reminded him that she would always welcome him with open arms. Azuria asked Luxe to come to the Florist territory, which was a simple countryside. Still, she would be happy to have him. Meanwhile, Lyra expressed how happy she was that she had the chance to meet him. Luxe's eyes welled up as he listened to everyone, but he quickly turned away before a single tear could fall. Claire asked what was wrong, but Luxe said it was nothing. Bro out here unlocking Disney Channel tears like its season finale. He couldn't believe that the day had really come. Luxe, the hated one, had made it that far. The smiles of the girls in front of him were proof that his past wasn't a mistake. Just then, Morga called out to Luxe, informing him that they were now ready to go. Although it was now time for him to leave, Luxe knew that it wasn't over yet. Just then, Lyra called Luxe and she kissed him on the cheek. At that moment, Luxe told himself that he would live happily from now on. That is the complete ending of the manga at chapter 13. Hope you enjoyed watching.